In the 41st millennium, there is only war. But what happens when hope itself falls from the stars, when a being who embodies everything the Imperium has spent 10,000 years crushing arrives in a universe that has forgotten mercy? The collision would shake worlds. It would break heroes. And it would force one question into the light. Can goodness survive when survival demands damnation? The auger arrays detected at first a spatial anomaly that shouldn't exist, tearing through the warp like a blade through flesh. Not a ship. Not a daemon incursion. Something else entirely. The object blazed across Metro City's night sky, trailing impossible colors that made tech priests weep and scream in equal measure. It struck the Underhive with the force of an orbital bombardment. It was sending shockwaves through 90 levels of industrial decay and human misery. Kal-El of Krypton, known to his adopted world as Superman, came to consciousness in darkness that stank of promethium fumes and desperation. His head rang like a tolling bell. Every sense screamed wrongness. The stars above, visible through the crater he'd carved, burned with wavelengths his cells didn't recognize. Red-tinged, hostile, his skin, invulnerable to nuclear fire in the void of space, felt heavy for the first time in his adult life. He rose slowly, cape torn and smoking, the stylized S-shield on his chest cracked but intact. Around him, the Underhive's inhabitants scattered like insects, their faces hidden behind rebreather masks and goggles. They wore rags stitched from industrial canvas, their skin marked with chemical burns and gang tattoos. Some clutched auto guns, crude weapons that would barely scratch his skin under Earth's yellow sun. Here, in this place of wrong stars and wronger air, he wasn't certain. "Easy," Superman said, raising his hands in the universal gesture of peace. His voice, usually commanding and warm, came out hoarse. The air itself tasted of metal and decay. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I need help. Where am I?" The crowd didn't answer. They simply stared, then fled deeper into the labyrinthine darkness of the Underhive. Superman's super-hearing, diminished but still functional, caught fragments of their panicked whispers. "Here-tech abomination. Fell from the stars. Inquisition will purge us all." Before he could call out again, klaxons began wailing across the city. Red emergency lights pulsed through the smog, and then Superman heard something else, something that made his Kryptonian heart skip a beat. Marching. Thousands of synchronized footsteps, accompanied by the mechanical growl of armor servos and the distinctive thrum of anti-grav engines. The Adeptus Arbits had arrived. They came in force, 100 enforcers in black carapace armor, their faces hidden behind helmet visors that gleamed like insect eyes. Behind them, Chimera transports disgorged squads of Astra Militarum soldiers, laser guns raised and aimed at the crater's center. At the formation's head stood a figure in ornate power armor, a crimson cloak bearing the seal of the Adepta Sororitas billowing behind her. A battle sister, her bolter, a weapon that fired explosive mass-reactive rounds, was trained directly on Superman's chest. "In the name of the God Emperor of mankind," she announced, her voice amplified by voxcasters, "you will identify yourself and state your purpose on Metro City. Resistance will be met with immediate termination." Superman's X-ray vision flickered as he tried to scan the woman's armor, but psychic static, something he'd never encountered before, blurred his perception. He could see bones and organs through the soldiers' bodies, but the technology itself seemed to resist his sight, wreathed in an aura that felt almost alive. Wrong. Corrupted by something he couldn't name. "My name is Kal-El," he said carefully, lowering himself to the ground in a non-threatening posture. "I'm from Earth. There was an accident, a dimensional rift. I don't know how I got here, but I mean no harm. I'm looking for a way home." The battle sister didn't lower her weapon. Earth? We have 1,000,000 worlds in the Imperium's domain. You will submit to interrogation, stranger. Your genetic composition, your technological anomalies, your very existence violates 17 articles of the Lex Imperialis. You are hereby classified as Xenos until proven otherwise. Xenos? Superman's enhanced hearing caught the word being repeated through Vox channels, each repetition edged with fear and hatred. I'm human. I'm trying to help. Silence. The battle sister took a step forward, and Superman noticed the purity seals hanging from her armor, the Gothic script inked onto human skin. Your physiology defies the Emperor's sacred human template. Your garments bear heretical iconography. Say, and you possess abilities that suggest either witchcraft or Xenos contamination. You will comply, or you will be purged. Superman's jaw tightened. He'd faced governments, militaries, even gods who'd tried to force his compliance. He'd always found a way to talk them down, to show them reason. But something in this woman's eyes, visible now through her helmet's targeting lens, told him that reason had no place here. This was a universe that had calcified around certainty, around fear. I won't fight you, Superman said quietly, but I won't be treated like a criminal for surviving a crash. The battle sister's finger moved to her bolter's trigger. Then you have chosen. The sky exploded with light. A figure descended from the clouds, who wreathed in golden radiance that pushed back the smog and darkness like the sun itself had taken human form. He wore armor of gleaming white and azure, a cape of living light flowing behind him. His face, chiseled, perfect, and utterly inhuman in its divine beauty, surveyed the scene with eyes that glowed like stars. Metroman, Metro City's living saint, the Emperor's champion. The Astra Militarum soldiers immediately dropped to their knees, weapons clattering to the ground as they pressed their foreheads to the rockcrete. The battle sister knelt more slowly, her voice thick with religious fervor. Living saint, we serve at your command. Metroman landed between Superman and the Imperial forces with the gentleness of a falling feather. Up close, Superman could see the differences between them. Where his own powers came from Kryptonian biology and solar radiation, Metroman's radiated something else. Something that felt like psychic energy filtered through absolute certainty. Faith made manifest. Rise, faithful servants, Metroman said, his voice resonant and impossibly compelling. I will handle this anomaly. He turned to face Superman, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, Superman saw something flicker in those glowing eyes. Recognition, confusion. Then it was gone, replaced by divine authority. You, Metroman said, his gaze boring into Superman, are either the Emperor's miracle or his greatest test. We shall determine which. Superman met his gaze without flinching, even as his Kryptonian senses screamed warnings he didn't yet understand. This wasn't just another superhuman. This was something that had been a hero once, perhaps. Something that had been twisted into a weapon wrapped in faith and righteousness. I'm neither, Superman said quietly. I'm just someone trying to find his way home. Metroman smiled, and it was the saddest thing Superman had seen in this dark new universe. Home. Stranger, you've arrived in the 41st Millennium. There is no home here. Only service. Only sacrifice. Only the Emperor's eternal vigilance against the darkness. He extended a hand, not in friendship, but in command. Come. The Inquisition will want to see you, and if you truly mean no harm, you will submit willingly. Because if you don't, the light around Metroman intensified, painful and absolute. I will make you. Superman looked at the hand, at the kneeling soldiers, saw at the Underhive's darkness pressing in from all sides. He thought of Lois, of Jonathan and Martha, of a Earth where the sun was yellow and hope still meant something. Then he looked back at Metroman and saw a reflection of what he might become if he ever stopped fighting for what was right. "All right," Superman said, not taking the hand. "I'll go with you, but not because you're threatening me. Because I want to understand this place, and because somewhere in you, I think there's still a hero who remembers what it means to protect people, not just rule them." Metroman's expression didn't change, but his hand lowered slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that Superman would only later understand, the weight of 10,000 years of crushed hope and necessary atrocities. "Then prepare yourself, stranger, because understanding this universe will break you. It breaks everyone." The Imperial forces formed a cordon around them both as Metroman lifted into the air, gesturing for Superman to follow. As they rose above Metro City's towering hive spires, Superman saw it fully for the first time, a metropolis of 90 billion souls packed into structures that clawed at the sky, belching smoke and prayers in equal measure. Cathedrals larger than mountains, factories that ground human lives into ammunition and corpse starch. And everywhere, the double-headed Aquila, the symbol of an empire built on the bones of hope. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions and impossible heroes caught between salvation and damnation, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to the Dark Millennium, and this is only the beginning. Superman followed Metroman into the poisoned sky, his cape streaming behind him like a flag of defiance in a universe that had forgotten what flags stood for. He didn't know it yet, but his arrival had already changed everything. The Inquisition was watching. Chaos was stirring. And somewhere in the warp, powers beyond comprehension smiled at the sound of hope entering a hopeless galaxy. The Sanctum Imperialis rose from Metro City's highest spire like a dagger pointed at the heavens. Its walls were constructed from blessed adamantium and the bones of saints, its foundations rooted in the execution grounds where 10,000 heretics burned daily. Gargoyles carved from fossilized demon flesh leered from buttresses, their mouths frozen mid-scream. Stained glass windows depicted the Emperor's conquest of the galaxy in scenes of such brutal glory that Superman had to look away. Metroman led him through halls lined with skulls, not decorative, but structural. Human remains mortared into the architecture itself, their empty eye sockets watching every step. Servo skulls floated past, their mechanical augmentations whirring as they recorded Superman's presence with picked capture devices grafted where eyes had once been. "Tut, your kind doesn't exist in Imperial records," Metroman said without looking back, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings inscribed with high Gothic prayers. "No xenospecies matches your physiological profile. No sanctioned abhumans possess your capabilities. The Mechanicus will want to vivisect you to understand how you function. The Inquisition will want to burn you to ensure you don't spread contamination." Superman's fists clenched. "I told you, I'm human, just not from here." "Human?" Metroman stopped before massive bronze doors engraved with scenes of the Emperor's ascension. "Do you know what that word means in this millennium? Humanity is not a genetic designation, stranger. It is a spiritual one. It is obedience to the Golden Throne. It is faith in the God Emperor's eternal sacrifice. And it is the willingness to die screaming if it serves the Imperium." He finally turned, and Superman saw something flicker behind those glowing eyes again. Exhaustion, regret. You may have human DNA, but until you accept the Emperor's divinity, you are less than human. You are raw material. The doors swung open, revealing a chamber that made Superman's enhanced vision blur with psychic pressure. The Inquisitorial Tribunal Hall stretched before them, its ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to move with malevolent intelligence. At its center sat a massive throne of black iron and human bone, and upon it perched Inquisitor Vorentia Kallax. She was ancient. Cybernetic augmentations had extended her life far beyond natural limits. One eye was a brass augmetic lens that rotated with mechanical precision. So her left arm had been replaced entirely with a Baroque power fist crackling with disruption fields. Purity seals covered her like armor, each one inscribed with the names of worlds she'd condemned to exterminatus. Behind her stood her retinue, a psyker in chains, trembling with barely controlled power, a death cult assassin whose movements were too smooth to be entirely human, and a tech priest whose body was more machine than flesh, mechadendrites writhing like steel tentacles. "Kneel," Varencia commanded, her voice like grinding gears. Superman remained standing. "I don't kneel to tyrants." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Every servo skull in the chamber focused on Superman. The death cult assassin's hand moved to her power blade, but Metroman raised a hand, staying the violence. "Fascinating," Varencia said, her augmetic eye focusing on Superman with enough intensity that he felt it like physical pressure against his skull. "Defiance, arrogance, pride." She leaned forward. "I've seen these traits before. In heretics, in Xenos warlords, in those who thought themselves above the Emperor's judgment." Her mechanical fingers drummed against her throne. They all knelt eventually, or they burned. Superman's X-ray vision had mostly recovered, and what he saw beneath Varencia's robes horrified him. Her organs had been replaced with Baroque machinery. Her spine was a column of blessed steel. Her lungs were vat-grown replacements grafted with purity wards. She was barely organic anymore, a walking shrine to the Imperium's marriage of flesh and faith. "Living Saint Metroman," Varencia continued, not taking her eye off Superman. "Your report indicated spatial anomalies consistent with warp incursion. Yet our null servitors detect no demonic taint in this specimen. Explain." Metroman's glow dimmed slightly. Superman's enhanced hearing caught what might have been a sigh. "He fell through something else, Inquisitor. Not the warp. Something cleaner. A rift between realities, perhaps. The Mechanicus detected exotic radiation signatures during his descent. Particles that don't exist in our dimensional framework." "Impossible," the tech priest interjected, his voice a synthesized monotone overlaid with binary cant. "The Omnissiah's laws govern all reality. Foreign dimensional frameworks cannot exist." "And yet," Superman said quietly, "here I am." Varencia's organic lips twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Indeed, here you are, with strength that rivals an Astartes dreadnought, with flight capabilities that defy gravitational constants, with energy projection from your eyes that our sensors cannot classify." She stood, her power fist humming with lethal energy. "You are either the Emperor's greatest gift to Metro City, or the opening move in an invasion we cannot yet perceive." "I'm neither," Superman insisted, frustration creeping into his voice. "I'm trying to help you understand. I come from a place where we solved problems without fear, where we built civilizations on hope, not oppression, where heresy." The chained psyker suddenly screamed, his eyes bleeding golden light. "He speaks the language of chaos. Hope is the first lie. Hope is Tzeentch's gateway. Hope breeds change, and change is—" "Silence," Varencia commanded. But then the psyker's words cut off with a choking sound as his control collar activated. She returned her attention to Superman. "You see, even the concept you worship is corruption. The ruinous powers feed on such delusions. Hope, freedom, progress. These are the lies that damn civilizations." Superman felt something crack inside him, not his resolve, but his understanding. This wasn't just authoritarianism. This was a civilization that had weaponized despair, that had made fear and obedience into holy virtues because anything else invited literal damnation from the warp. "Tell me," Varencia said, descending the steps from her throne, "what happens when hope fails, when your ideals shatter against reality's cruelty, When the people you tried to save turn on you, corrupted by powers beyond your comprehension. Superman met her gaze. You fight harder. You find another way. No. Varencia stopped an arm's length away, and Superman could smell the sacred oils and incense that wafted from her augmetic components. You burn them. You purge the corruption before it spreads. You sacrifice the infected to save the whole. Because in this universe, stranger, there are no second chances. There is only eternal vigilance against infinite darkness. That's not justice, Superman said. That's just giving up. Metroman, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of centuries. Justice is a luxury, stranger. We have only survival, and survival demands prices you cannot imagine. Superman turned to him, studying the being who wore heroism like a funeral shroud. You were different once, weren't you? Before this, he gestured at the sanctum, at the skulls and holy symbols. You protected people because it was right, not because some emperor commanded it. For just a moment, Metroman's luminous facade cracked. Superman saw beneath it. Saw the man who had once been called Mark, who had saved Metro City from disasters and criminals with joy in his heart. Saw the moment that man had been broken, reconstituted and reforged into a living saint through psycho-indoctrination and faith conditioning that made torture seem merciful. That man is dead, Metroman whispered, but his voice carried doubt now. He had to die. The universe killed him. Or you let it, Superman said softly. The slap came so fast that even Superman's diminished reflexes barely registered it. The Metroman's hand, moving at supersonic speeds, caught him across the jaw with enough force to shatter ceramite. Superman's head snapped back, and for the first time since arriving in this nightmare universe, he tasted blood. You know nothing, Metroman roared, his divine radiance exploding outward in a blast that sent servo skulls clattering to the floor. You arrive here with your cape and your ideals and your self-righteous condemnation, and you think you understand. I have fought demons that wore the faces of children I failed to save. I have watched worlds burn because mercy would have damned billions more. I have stood in the Emperor's light and felt his absolute certainty that cruelty is the only kindness this universe allows. Superman wiped blood from his lip. It was already healing, his Kryptonian cells adapting to this reality's hostile stellar radiation. He looked at Metroman with something that might have been pity. I understand more than you think, Superman said. I've faced gods and monsters. I've made impossible choices. But I never let the darkness convince me to become part of it. Then you have never truly faced darkness, Varencia interjected, her augmetic eye whirring as it refocused. But you will. Tech Priest Varn, prepare the psychic resonance scanner. We will determine this creature's true nature. The Tech Priest's mechadendrites extended, each one tipped with arcane instruments that hummed with barely contained power. Compliance, Inquisitor, initiating deep pattern analysis. Warning, subject may experience neural trauma during scanning. Wait, Superman said. But restraint fields had already activated around him, invisible forces that pressed against his body like solid walls. His strength could probably break them, but doing so would trigger a firefight he didn't want. Not yet. Not until he understood what he was truly dealing with. The scanning began, and Superman's scream echoed through the sanctum as psychic energy probed his mind, his memories, his very soul, searching for the taint of chaos that the Inquisition knew must be hiding somewhere in this impossibly powerful stranger. They found something else instead. The psychic resonance scanner tore through Superman's consciousness like claws through silk. He saw his own memories projected onto the sanctum's walls. Krypton's destruction, the Kents finding him in a field of Kansas wheat, his first flight above Metropolis, Lois's smile, Lex Luthor's schemes, Darkseid's Omega beams carving reality itself. Each memory flickered and distorted as it passed through the scanner's alien methodology, translated into data the tech priest could analyze. Tech priest Varn's mechadendrites twitched with agitation. Impossible. Genetic markers indicate Xenos origin, yet cultural imprinting suggests human socialization. Neural architecture optimized for solar energy absorption and conversion. Cellular structure capable of storing stellar radiation at efficiency ratios that violate thermodynamic orthodoxy. This specimen should not exist within the Omnissiah's laws. Yet he does, Varencia said, watching Superman's memories with the cold fascination of a vivisectionist. And that alone makes him dangerous. What else, Varn? Psychological profile indicates altruistic conditioning, hyperdeveloped empathy centers, neurochemical resistance to corruption stimuli, Inquisitor. The tech priest's synthesized voice carried something that might have been confusion. This being is fundamentally incapable of accepting chaos worship. His neural architecture rejects it at a cellular level. He is pure. The word hung in the air like a curse. Varencia's organic eye widened. Pure? Nothing is pure except the Emperor himself. Run the scan again. There must be corruption somewhere. Hidden, dormant, until waiting. Compliance. The scanner intensified, and Superman's vision went white with agony. His Kryptonian physiology was adapting, yes, but psychic assault was something his cells had no natural defense against. He felt the probe dig deeper, searching for the darkness that must exist in any being with such power. It found only light. Impossible, Varencia whispered, and for the first time Superman heard genuine fear in her voice. He is incorruptible. An incorruptible being with godlike power, arriving from beyond our reality. This is either the Emperor's greatest miracle. She turned to Metroman, or the greatest threat we have ever faced. Metroman stood silent, his radiance flickering like a candle in wind. Superman, through his pain, saw the living saint's hands trembling, and saw the doubt written in every line of that supposedly divine face. "Release him," Metroman said quietly. "What?" Varencia's head snapped toward him. "Living saint. He must be contained, studied. His genetics could revolutionize our understanding of—" "I said release him!" The command exploded from Metroman with such force that cracks spider-webbed across the sanctum's floor. His eyes blazed with light that made the servo skull's sensors scream and die. "You will not do to him what was done to me. You will not break another soul on the wheel of your certainty." The restraint fields collapsed. Superman dropped to one knee, gasping, his enhanced senses slowly recovering from the psychic violation. He looked up at Metroman and saw something he hadn't expected. Protection. The living saint had positioned himself between Superman and the Inquisitor, his body language radiating threat despite the holy iconography. "Stand down, living saint," Varencia said coldly. "Your emotional compromise is noted and will be reported to the ecclesiarchy. This Xenos is no threat to the Imperium." Metroman interrupted. "Your own tech priest confirmed it. He cannot be corrupted. He possesses no weapons save his own body. He seeks only to return home." The living saint's voice dropped to something almost pleading. "Let him go, Varencia. For once, let something good exist without destroying it." Varencia studied them both with her augmetic eye, calculations running behind brass and glass. Finally, she spoke. "No, the stranger represents too many unknowns. However," she gestured, and then the death cult assassin retreated into shadows. "He will not be executed, not yet. Living Saint Metroman, you will take custody of this being. You will instruct him in the ways of the Imperium. You will determine if he can be utilized. If he proves tractable, he may serve the Emperor. If not. Superman stood, his legs still shaking from the psychic assault, but his voice steady. "Then you burn. Varencia said simply. "Along with any fool who tries to protect you." The threat was clear. Metroman's intervention had bought Superman time, but it had also chained the living saint's fate to his own. If Superman failed whatever test the Inquisition imposed, they would both face purging. "Come," Metroman said, turning toward the exit, "before she changes her mind." Superman followed, his cape dragging through sanctified dust and scattered servo-skull components. As they walked through corridors lined with the Imperium's countless martyrs, he felt his body slowly recovering. The stellar radiation from this universe's sun, a red giant named Sol Dominus, was weaker than Earth's yellow sun, but his cells were learning to compensate, drawing more energy from less light, adapting as Kryptonian physiology always did. By the time they reached Metroman's private quarters, Superman's strength had returned to perhaps 85% of normal. His flight felt heavier, requiring more conscious effort. His heat vision flickered inconsistently, but he was functional. He was still Superman, even if this universe didn't have a name for what that meant. Metroman's chambers occupied the sanctum's highest tower, but they were surprisingly sparse. A simple cot, a shrine to the Emperor carved from obsidian, and a single window overlooking Metro City's endless sprawl. No personal effects, no photographs or mementos. Nothing that suggested the occupant was anything more than a weapon awaiting orders. "You risked yourself for me," Superman said, breaking the silence. "Why?" Metroman stood at the window, his back to Superman, his luminous aura dimmed to almost nothing. When he spoke, his voice carried centuries of exhaustion. "Because I saw myself in you, or rather, I saw who I used to be." He turned, and Superman saw that the divine facade had crumbled entirely. The face beneath was human, tired, scarred by invisible wounds, and infinitely sad. "My name was Mark. I was Metro City's protector when it was still a free world, before the Imperium's crusade fleets arrived. I had powers like yours, speed, strength, flight. I thought I could save everyone." "What happened?" Superman asked, though part of him already knew. "The Imperium happened." Metroman, Mark, gestured at the window, at the city below. "They offered integration into the Emperor's domains, protection from the Xenos threats that had been raiding our system. All we had to do was accept the Imperial creed, tithe our resources, provide soldiers for the Imperial Guard." His hands clenched. "I refused. I fought them. For 3 years I held them off, protecting my world from salvation." Superman's jaw tightened. "They broke you?" "Worse." Mark's laugh was hollow. "They were right. The Xenos came, Orcs first, then Dark Eldar raiders. I fought them, I won battles, but I couldn't be everywhere at once, so I couldn't save everyone. And the things I saw in those raids..." He closed his eyes. "The Imperium's forces arrived during the final Dark Eldar assault. They drove the Xenos back with tactics I found abhorrent, sacrificing entire hive sectors to deny the raiders their prize, burning children infected with homunculi parasites, executing citizens who'd been touched by warp-tainted weapons. So you surrendered," Superman said quietly. "I evolved." Mark's eyes snapped open, and Superman saw the terrible certainty there. "I learned that my ideals were luxuries this universe cannot afford. The Imperium's cruelty isn't sadism. It's survival strategy perfected over 10 millennia. Every atrocity I witnessed prevented worse horrors. Every tyranny maintained order against chaos. Literal chaos with a capital C. It's that wants to devour reality itself." Superman shook his head. "There's always another way. There has to be." "Does there?" Mark moved with superhuman speed, suddenly inches from Superman's face. "Tell me, stranger from a gentler universe, what do you do when mercy damns billions? When the enemy can corrupt your compassion and turn it into a weapon? When saving one person means dooming a world?" His voice cracked. "What do you do when being a hero makes you a fool?" Superman met his gaze without flinching. You stay a hero anyway. Because the moment you stop fighting for what's right, you've already lost. Lost? Mark laughed, bitter and broken. Lost implies there was something to win. This is the 41st Millennium, Superman. Yes, I know your name now. I saw it in your memories during the scan. There is no winning here. There is only surviving one more day, one more century, one more crusade against the darkness. He turned away. The Imperium transformed me into a living saint through psycho-conditioning and faith rituals that rewrote my neural pathways. They made me a symbol, a weapon, and I let them because the alternative was watching my world burn. Superman's fists clenched so hard the air around them shimmered. That's not evolution, that's surrender. Call it what you want. Mark returned to the window. But know this, you will face the same choice soon. The Inquisition will test you. They'll put you in situations where your precious morals become liabilities, where choosing mercy means enabling horrors. He glanced back, his expression unreadable. And when that happens, when this universe breaks your certainty as it broke mine, I will be there. Because if you fall, I want it to be to someone who understands what was lost. Superman walked to stand beside him at the window, looking out at a metro city's 90 billion souls. From this height, he could see everything with his enhanced vision. The factorum's grinding workers into statistical casualties, the ecclesiarchy cathedrals extracting tithes from the desperate, the execution squares where dissidents burned daily. But he also saw families huddled together in the underhive's darkness, sharing rations. Saw workers helping each other despite exhaustion. Saw children drawing pictures on factory walls with stolen pigment, their art depicting stars they'd never see. You're wrong, Superman said finally, about this universe breaking me. Not because I'm stronger than you, I'm not sure I am, especially here. But because I've seen what giving up looks like. He turned to face Mark directly. It looks like you. And I'd rather die than become that. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Mark's expression shifted, not to anger, but to something that might have been Hope's corpse, twitching with unnatural life. Then you're already dead, Mark said. You just don't know it yet. A klaxon suddenly blared across the city, deep, resonant, and edged with panic. Mark's head snapped toward the window, his divine radiance flaring back to full intensity. Superman's super-hearing filtered through the city's cacophony to find the source of alarm. Warp rift detected, Sector 77 Gamma. A Voxcaster announcer screamed across the city's Vox network. All citizens to sanctified shelters. Gela field generators to maximum output. In the Emperor's name, run! Mark was already moving toward the door when Superman caught his arm. What's happening? Chaos, Mark said, and the word carried the weight of absolute horror. The psychic resonance from scanning you, it must have created a beacon in the warp. Tzeentch's forces are coming. He looked at Superman with eyes that had seen civilizations die. This is your first lesson in the 41st Millennium's reality. We're about to be attacked by demons, literal embodiments of change, hope, and ambition twisted into nightmare forms. And you're going to help me kill them, or you're going to watch millions die. I don't kill, Superman said. Mark's smile was terrible. You will, or they'll make you wish they'd killed you first. Welcome to the 41st Millennium, Superman. Class is in session. The tower shuddered as reality began to tear. The warp rift opened like a wound in reality's flesh. Superman saw it through the tower window, a gash in the sky that bled colors his Kryptonian eyes had no names for. Impossible geometries folded out of the tear, twisting space into configurations that made his vision blur and his mind recoil. The air itself screamed. Then the daemons came. They poured through the rift in a cascade of feathers and flame and flesh that constantly shifted between states of matter. Pink horrors, Tzeentch's lesser demons, cackled as they materialized above Metro City's mid-hive districts, their bodies wreathed in warp fire that burned without consuming. Behind them came flamers, serpentine nightmares, whose mouths vomited multicolored flames that transformed whatever they touched into screaming crystal sculptures. And riding the currents of impossible wind came a herald of Tzeentch, a lord of change whose wings spanned a city block, whose thousand eyes saw past and future simultaneously, whose mere presence made reality negotiable. "Emperor, preserve us," Mark breathed. But Superman heard no faith in those words, only habit. The city's defenders responded with practiced efficiency born of 10,000 years of siege warfare. Anti-aircraft batteries opened fire from every hive spire, filling the sky with flak and tracer rounds. Hydra platforms unleashed streams of autocannon fire that tore through demon flesh, each shell blessed by ecclesiarchy, priests and inscribed with prayers of banishment. Sanctioned psychers in reinforced towers began chanting, their combined will forming barriers of psychic force that shimmered like heat haze. The demons laughed, literally laughed, as last fire passed through their shifting forms. Material weapons had limited effect on immaterial beings. Only faith, psychic power, and specific blessed munitions could truly harm them. "Stay here," Mark commanded, golden light already surrounding him like a corona. "The Inquisition will—" Superman was already gone, crashing through the window in an explosion of armor glass and flying toward the nearest demon incursion. His cape streamed behind him like a banner of defiance as he accelerated to speeds that made the air crack and boom. "Damn it!" Mark followed, his own flight generating a trail of holy radiance that cut through the corrupted sky. Superman reached the first group of pink horrors as they descended toward a residential hab block. As he could see civilians fleeing below, families clutching children, elders being carried by the desperate young, all of them screaming prayers to an emperor who sat dying on a golden throne 10,000 light-years away. "Get back!" Superman shouted, interposing himself between the demons and the civilians. The pink horrors paused, their constantly grinning faces regarding him with alien curiosity. Then they spoke in unison, their voices overlapping in maddening harmony. "New thing, strange thing, not Imperium thing. What flavor is your hope? What texture is your change? We shall taste and see." They attacked as one, hurling bolts of warp fire that twisted through dimensions to strike from impossible angles. Superman dodged, his diminished but still superhuman reflexes carrying him through trajectories that shouldn't exist. The flames that missed him struck the headblock behind, and Superman watched in horror as solid rockcrete transmuted into screaming mouths, as steel girders became reaching tentacles, as entire floors of residential space transformed into nightmares of living architecture. "You can't dodge forever, bright thing," the horrors sang. "We are change incarnate. We are possibility unleashed. We are—" Superman's heat vision lanced out, twin beams of concentrated solar energy burning through the chest of the nearest demon. The horror shrieked, a sound that made Superman's teeth ache, and split into two blue horrors, smaller and more vicious versions of the original. They giggled and immediately lunged for him with claws that phased through normal matter but could tear souls. "Fascinating," one blue horror chittered. "He burns but does not corrupt. He destroys but does not despair. What are you, Sunchild?" Superman grabbed both blue horrors by their scrawny necks, feeling their flesh squirm and burn against his invulnerable skin. They felt wrong, not just physically dangerous, but ontologically corrupting. Like touching them too long might make him forget what hands were supposed to feel like. "I'm someone who doesn't let monsters hurt innocent people," Superman said, and threw them both into the sky with enough force to send them tumbling back toward the warp rift. But there were dozens more, hundreds. They swarmed through the air like loquent made of madness, and behind them the flamers were setting entire city sectors ablaze with fire that transformed matter into abstract concepts. Superman could see people below being consumed by the flames. their bodies breaking down into mathematical equations and philosophical paradoxes before ceasing to exist entirely. Then Mark arrived like a meteor of holy light, and the demons recoiled. The living saint's radiance burned with psychic intensity that made the demons scream. Where Superman's solar-powered physiology was merely resistant to their corruption, Mark's faith-fueled power was anathema to them. He moved through the demon swarm like a sword through silk, each touch of his hands causing pink horrors to combust into ash and scattered warp stuff. "With me!" Mark roared, and Superman felt the command resonate not just in his ears, but in his chest, in his bones, in the very concept of obedience that the Imperium had spent 10 millennia weaponizing. Superman resisted the compulsion, barely, and flew to Mark's side. Together they carved through the demon host, Superman using precision heat vision to target critical mass points in the horror's forms, while Mark's holy radiance disrupted their connection to the warp. "Aim for their cores," Mark shouted over the cacophony of screaming demons and roaring flames. "The bright spots in their chests, that's where they anchor to reality." Superman's X-ray vision focused, filtering through layers of impossible anatomy until he found what Mark described. Knots of concentrated warp energy that pulsed like hearts. He targeted them with surgical precision, heat vision lancing out in controlled bursts that destabilized the demon's physical manifestations without destroying the surrounding architecture. "You're holding back," Mark accused, disintegrating 3 horrors with a sweep of his hand. "Fight with full force, or we all die." "I won't risk the civilians," Superman countered, catching a flamer's stream of transmutative fire on his chest. The flames washed over his invulnerable skin, trying to change him into something else, failing against Kryptonian cellular structure that had evolved specifically to resist and adapt. There has to be a way to... The Lord of Change descended. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. A demon the size of a titan, wrapped in feathers that were each a different vision of possible futures. Its staff crackled with sorcerous power that made reality hiccup and stutter. When it spoke, its voice came from every direction simultaneously, from the past and future and present all at once. Metroman, Superman. The names echoed with weight that bent space-time. The architect of fate has foreseen your meeting. He offers you truth. The Imperium lies. The Emperor lies. This universe need not be suffering and stagnation. It could be change, growth, evolution. Superman felt the words trying to take root in his mind, offering visions of worlds where hope actually worked, where his ideals could flourish, where the darkness could be pushed back through wisdom and understanding rather than fire and faith. "Don't listen." Mark grabbed Superman's shoulder, his touch burning with psychic force that disrupted the demonic whispers. "That's how they get you, through the things you want most." But the Lord of Change wasn't finished. "Superman of Krypton, your world died because it stagnated, refused change, rejected evolution. And the Imperium is your world writ large, a dying empire clinging to corpse worship and fear. Its 1,000 eyes focused on him. I offer you power to change this reality, to make it better, to save these people from their own empire's cruelty." Superman's fists clenched. Part of him, the part that had watched the Imperium's atrocities in the Underhive, that had seen the Inquisition's casual cruelty, that had heard Mark's broken confession, wanted to listen, wanted to believe there was an alternative to the Imperium's nightmare. Then he looked down at the civilians below and saw what Tzeentch's improvement actually meant. The people caught in the warp fire weren't being elevated or enlightened. They were being transformed into screaming sculptures of living crystal, to their consciousnesses trapped in bodies that had become prisons of impossible geometry. Their minds were being expanded, forced to comprehend dimensions and possibilities that human sanity could not contain. They were being improved in ways that destroyed everything that made them human. This was what chaos called better. This was the truth behind the honeyed words. "No," Superman said, his voice cutting through the demon's psychic assault like steel through fog. "You're not offering change. You're offering annihilation dressed in philosophy. You're not here to save anyone. You're here to consume them." The Lord of Change's beautiful face twisted into something monstrous. "Fool. You choose stagnation over transcendence. You choose the Corpse Emperor's lie over Tzeentch's truth." "I choose people over ideas," Superman said. Every time, he flew directly at the Lord of Change, accelerating to speeds that made the air ignite around him. The demon raised its staff, unleashing a torrent of warp fire that would have unmade a space marine dreadnought. Superman flew through it, his Kryptonian cells absorbing and dissipating the transmutative energies, his will too strong to be reshaped by external forces. His fist connected with the demon's chest with the force of an orbital strike. Reality cracked. The Lord of Change screamed, a sound that made windows shatter across 12 city sectors, and staggered backward, its physical form destabilizing. Superman pressed the advantage, heat vision carving through the demon's wings, super breath creating cyclones that disrupted its connection to the warp. "Impossible," the demon shrieked. "But you are not blessed by the false emperor. Your power is not psychic. How do you resist?" "Because I'm not from here," Superman said, driving another punch into the demon's crystalline core. "I come from a universe where matter and energy follow rules, where physics isn't negotiable, where hope isn't heresy." He could feel his strength surging now, his cells finally adapting fully to this reality's stellar radiation, drawing power from Sol Dominus with increasing efficiency. "And I'm going to show this universe what that means." Mark arrived in a blaze of holy radiance, adding his faith-powered might to Superman's assault. Together, they struck the Lord of Change with such force that the demon's physical manifestation shattered, fragments of impossible matter scattering back toward the warp rift. "Remember this, Superman," the demon's voice echoed as it dissolved. "The Imperium will use you as it used Metroman. It will break your hope, corrupt your compassion, turn your strength into tyranny." Its final words came as a whisper that only Superman could hear. "And when that day comes, Tzeentch will be waiting." Then it was gone, dragged back through the rift by forces Superman couldn't perceive. The remaining lesser demons, deprived of their leader's anchoring presence, began discorporating, screaming and laughing in equal measure as they dissolved into warp stuff and nightmares. The rift sealed with a sound like reality exhaling in relief. Superman floated in the poisoned sky above Metro City, breathing hard despite his near-limitless endurance. His uniform was scorched, his cape torn, and his body ached from combat against entities that defied everything he understood about physics and biology. But he had won. Mark descended to hover beside him, the living saint's radiance dimmed to almost nothing. For a long moment, neither spoke. Below them, the city's defenders were already moving, medici teams rushing toward the wounded, ecclesiarchy priests performing rites of cleansing over corrupted zones, Astra Militarum soldiers establishing perimeter security. "You fought well," Mark said finally. "Better than I expected." "We saved them," Superman replied, watching the rescue operations below. "That's what matters." "Did we?" Mark's voice was hollow. "Look closer, Superman. Use those enhanced eyes of yours. Tell me what you see." Superman focused, and his triumph turned to ash in his mouth. The Imperium's forces weren't just rescuing survivors. They were executing them. Anyone who had been touched by warp fire, anyone who had looked directly at the demons, anyone who showed even the slightest signs of corruption, all of them were being rounded up and shot. Families begging for mercy. Children screaming for parents who were already dead. Elders who had survived a century of Imperial service, gunned down because they had the misfortune of witnessing demons. "No," Superman breathed. "No, this is necessary," Mark finished. Chaos corruption spreads through memory, through witnessing, through the mere knowledge that demons exist and can be bargained with. Everyone who saw what we saw today, everyone who heard Tzeentch's offer, is now a potential vector for corruption. Yet the Inquisition's protocol is clear: purge the infected to save the whole. Superman's fists clenched. They're people, innocent people who just survived a demon attack. There are no innocent people in the 41st millennium, Mark said. Only different degrees of guilt, only different costs of survival. He turned to face Superman fully. This is your lesson, Superman. This is what I meant when I said your ideals don't work here. We saved the city from demons. The Imperium saved it from the survivors. Both were necessary. Superman wanted to argue, wanted to fly down there and stop the executions, wanted to believe there was another way. But he had seen what the demons offered, had felt Tzeentch's whispers trying to take root in his own mind, and had watched people transform into something that wore human shapes but contained only screaming madness. And he understood, hated it, rejected it, but understood why the Imperium did what it did. There has to be a better way, Superman said, but his voice carried doubt now. Mark smiled sadly. When you find it, let me know. I've been looking for 10,000 years. They descended together toward the Sanctum Imperialis, where Inquisitor Varencia would be waiting with questions, accusations, and new tests. Where Superman would have to account for his actions and his choices and the terrible knowledge that in this universe, victory and atrocity wore the same face. Behind them, the execution squads continued their grim work, and Metro City's 90 billion souls prayed to a corpse god for salvation that would never come. Superman's education in the 41st millennium had begun. The Sanctum Imperialis's debriefing chamber stank of incense, ozone, and something else. The acrid residue of burned human flesh that no amount of sacred smoke could mask. Superman stood before Inquisitor Varencia's tribunal once more, his cape still smoking from warp fire, his uniform stained with demon ichor that evaporated slowly into psychically charged vapor. Varencia sat upon her throne of bone and iron, her augmetic eye whirring as it analyzed Superman frame by frame, searching for any sign of corruption. Behind her, servitors, lobotomized humans, cybernetically augmented into living machines, recorded every word, every gesture, every microsecond of hesitation. You engaged a Lord of Change in direct combat, Varencia stated, her mechanical fingers drumming against her throne's armrest, without psychic training, without faith-based protection, without even understanding what you faced. Her organic eye narrowed. Yet you emerged uncorrupted. Explain. Superman met her gaze without flinching, though exhaustion pulled at his enhanced physiology. The battle had drained him more than any fight on Earth ever had. Not physically, but psychically. The demons hadn't just attacked his body. They'd attacked the concept of what his body was, trying to rewrite his existence at a fundamental level. I don't know, Superman admitted. My physiology is different from yours. Maybe that's why their corruption couldn't take hold. Maybe you are corruption, the chained psyker suddenly hissed, his bleeding eyes locked on Superman. Maybe you're Tzeentch's greatest trick, incorruptible bait to lure us into false security, change wrapped in heroism, the evolution disguised as salvation. Silence, Varencia commanded, but she didn't dismiss the accusation. The psyker raises valid concerns. You resisted temptation that has broken saints. You survived warp exposure that would liquefy an unprotected human's brain. You display abilities that violate the Omnissiah's laws. She leaned forward. What are you, truly? I told you. You told us you're human from another reality, but Tech Priest Varn's analysis suggests something else. Varencia gestured, and a hololith projection materialized in the chamber's center, a slowly rotating image of Superman's cellular structure as captured during the psychic scan. Your DNA contains architectural patterns found in no Imperial database. Not human, not Xenos, not even abhuman sanctioned by the Administratum. You're something new. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. In the Imperium, new was synonymous with heretical. Mark, still armored in his living Saint regalia, stepped forward from where he'd been standing, silent witness. He fought for the Imperium, Inquisitor, saved thousands of lives, destroyed a herald of Tzeentch. What more proof of loyalty do you require? Loyalty? Varencia's laugh was like grinding gears. Demons are loyal to chaos. Tyranids are loyal to the hive mind. Loyalty means nothing without understanding its object. She returned her attention to Superman. Tell me, stranger, do you accept the God Emperor as the master of mankind? Do you acknowledge his divine right to rule, his holy sacrifice, his eternal vigil against the dark? Superman felt the weight of the question. This wasn't just theology. It was a test of whether he could function within the Imperium's framework, whether he could be controlled. I respect what he represents to your people, Superman said carefully. The idea of sacrifice for others, of standing against darkness, but worship, faith in divine authority? He shook his head. I believe in people, in their capacity to choose good, in freedom and heresy. The Psyker moaned, heresy dripping from every word. Varencia raised a hand, forestalling whatever execution order she was considering. You speak of freedom as if it were virtue, of choice as if it were sacred. These are the lies that damn civilization, stranger. Freedom is chaos. Choice is corruption. Not only obedience to the Emperor's will maintains order against the warp's hunger. Then you've already surrendered, Superman said, exhaustion making him reckless. You've let fear turn you into exactly what you claim to fight against: tyranny, oppression, the destruction of everything that makes life worth living. Worth living? Varencia stood, her power fist crackling to life. You dare speak of life's worth? I have witnessed the deaths of 17 worlds. I have personally ordered the exterminatus of 3 more. I have burned children who smiled at me because they had been corrupted by Nurgle's plagues. I have executed men who begged for mercy because mercy would have doomed their entire regiment to chaos. She descended the steps toward Superman, each footfall echoing like a judge's gavel. I have done these things not because I am cruel, but because I understand what you refuse to accept. That in this universe, survival demands prices that would make death seem merciful. Superman held his ground as she approached, though every instinct screamed that this woman was dangerous in ways the demons hadn't been. Demons wanted to corrupt him. Varencia wanted to break him and rebuild him into something useful. Then maybe, Superman said quietly, survival isn't enough. Maybe you need something worth surviving for. For a moment, Varencia's augmetic eyes stopped moving. The chamber fell absolutely silent save for the breathing of servitors and the distant hum of the sanctum's generators. Then she laughed, a sound like broken glass grinding against steel. Something worth surviving for, she repeated. Do you know what the Emperor fought for, stranger? What he sacrificed his immortality to achieve? She gestured at the massive stained glass window depicting the Emperor's conquest. Unity, order, the survival of humanity against a galaxy that wants us extinct. He gave up everything, his freedom, his dreams, his very life, so that humanity might endure. That is what we survive for. That is what we die for. That is worth more than your childish ideals of freedom and choice. And what has it cost you? Superman asked. 10,000 years of this. 90 billion souls on this world alone, most of them living in misery, fighting endless wars against enemies you created through your own cruelty. Is that really survival? Or is it just slow extinction dressed in prayer? Varencia's power fist shot out faster than Superman's diminished reflexes could track, stopping inches from his throat. Disruption fields crackled against his skin, painful even to his Kryptonian physiology. You stand in the Sanctum Imperialis and question the Imperium's methods, Varencia hissed. You dare suggest that 10,000 years of sacrifice, of humanity's greatest heroes giving everything, was wrong. Her organic eye blazed with fanatic fury. I should kill you where you stand. I should have you flayed and your corpse hung from the city walls as a warning against pride and heresy. But you won't, Mark said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Because he's useful. Because whatever else he is, he can fight demons without faith, without psychic power, ours without any of the tools the Imperium relies on. Because in your cold, calculating mind, Varencia, you see what he could become, a weapon that doesn't require indoctrination or conditioning to function. Varencia's power fist slowly lowered. She turned to Mark with an expression that might have been respect or might have been contempt. With her augmetic features, it was impossible to tell. The living saint speaks wisdom, she said. Yes, the stranger is useful, potentially invaluable. She returned to her throne, settling into it like a judge pronouncing sentence. But usefulness alone does not grant trust. Therefore, I'm implementing Protocol Obsidian, probationary deployment under observation. What does that mean? Superman asked, though he suspected he knew. It means, Varencia said, that you will serve the Imperium under living Saint Metroman's direct supervision. You will undertake missions designated by this tribunal. You will prove your value through action, not words, and at any sign of corruption, any hint of treachery, any deviation from the Emperor's will. Her smile was terrible. You will be terminated with extreme prejudice, along with anyone foolish enough to shield you. The threat to Mark was explicit. Superman's fate was now chained to the living saints and vice versa. If Superman failed, Mark would burn for protecting him. It was elegant and cruel, exactly what Superman had come to expect from the Imperium. How long? Superman asked. Until I'm satisfied you pose no threat. Days, months, years, however long it takes. Varencia gestured dismissively. Living Saint Metroman will brief you on your first assignment. You are dismissed. Mark turned to leave, and Superman followed, acutely aware of the servo skulls tracking their every movement. As they walked through the sanctum's corridors once more, Superman noticed details he'd missed before, the way servitors flinched when he passed, the way tech priests whispered prayers when his shadow touched their robes, the way even hardened Astra Militarum soldiers gripped their laser guns tighter in his presence. They feared him, not because he'd done anything to them, but because he was unknown. Because in the Imperium, the unknown was always dangerous. What's the assignment? Superman asked when they'd reached a corridor empty enough for privacy. Mark's expression was unreadable. There's a situation in the Underhive. Sector 92 has gone silent. No Vox contact, no data transmissions, no refugees fleeing. Just silence. The Arbites sent a patrol to investigate. They didn't return. The Astra Militarum sent a platoon. Same result. And you want me to investigate, Superman said. We want us to investigate, Mark corrected. Together. You because Varencia needs to see you in action. Me because... He paused, struggling with words. Because I need to understand what you are, whether you're really incorruptible, or just corrupted in ways we don't recognize yet. Superman felt a flash of anger, then forced it down. Mark wasn't being unfair. In this universe, paranoia was survival strategy. Trust was a luxury that got worlds killed. When do we leave? Now. Mark's radiance flared slightly. The longer we wait, and the more likely whatever's down there spreads upward. In the Imperium, we've learned to amputate problems before they metastasize. They descended through Metro City's layers, from the gleaming spires where nobility lived in Baroque luxury, through the mid-hive where workers toiled in factorums that never slept, past the underhive slums where Superman had first crashed, and deeper still, into zones that hadn't seen maintenance in centuries. where the Emperor's light dimmed to nothing and older, darker things held sway. The air grew thicker, more toxic. Superman's enhanced lungs filtered out pollutants that would kill a normal human in minutes. Mark's divine radiance provided illumination, but even it seemed diminished down here, as if the darkness itself was hungry. They found the Arbite's patrol first. The enforcers' bodies were arranged in a perfect circle in what had once been a factorum floor. Their armor had been removed with surgical precision, placed in neat stacks. Their weapons lay disassembled, components sorted by function, and their bodies. Superman looked away, his invulnerable stomach churning. They were vivisected, Mark said, his voice clinically detached in the way of someone who'd seen too much horror to feel it anymore. While alive, you can tell by the stress markers in the muscle tissue. Someone wanted to understand how they worked, how they functioned, what made them... He trailed off, his radiance flickering. What made them human? Superman finished, understanding dawning with terrible clarity. The sound echoed through the abandoned factorum, metal scraping against metal, rhythmic and precise. Superman's X-ray vision pierced through layers of corroded machinery and structural supports, searching for the source. He found it in the factorum's deepest level, in what had once been a generatorium chamber. And what he saw made him understand why the Imperium's paranoia might not be paranoia at all. A figure worked in the darkness, surrounded by bodies and surgical equipment that gleamed with unnatural cleanliness despite the surrounding decay. It wore robes that had once been white but were now stained with fluids. Superman's enhanced vision identified as human in origin. Its hands moved with inhuman precision, dissecting an Astra Militarum soldier who was still technically alive, kept conscious through drugs and dark science. But it was the figure's face that made Superman's blood run cold. It looked human, almost. But the proportions were subtly wrong. Eyes too large, fingers too long, smile too wide. And when it turned to face them, Superman saw intelligence in those eyes. Not madness, not corruption, curiosity. "Ah," the figure said, its voice pleasant and conversational despite the horror surrounding it. "Visitors, how delightful. I was beginning to think no one cared about Sector 92 anymore." It gestured at the dissected soldier with a blood-slicked scalpel. "Please, come in. I've been studying humanity's resilience, and I must say, your species' pain tolerance is remarkable. But perhaps you could help me understand something." The figure's smile widened impossibly. "What happens when I dissect something that isn't quite human at all?" It moved, faster than anything that size should move. Scalpel aimed directly at Superman's throat. And when Superman understood that his education in the 41st Millennium's horrors had only just begun, the scalpel struck Superman's throat and shattered. Fragments of blades scattered across the factorum floor, tinkling like broken glass. The figure stumbled backward, its impossibly wide smile frozen in confusion. It looked down at the broken instrument, then back up at Superman, and its expression transformed from curiosity to rapturous fascination. "Extraordinary," it breathed. "Molecular density beyond Imperial ceramite. Cellular cohesion that defies standard biological architecture. You're not augmented. This is natural structure, but that's impossible." The figure began circling Superman like a predator, but its body language wasn't threatening. It was the stance of a scientist encountering a specimen beyond all theoretical models. "What are you? Some lost product of the dark age of technology? A Xenos hybrid? A biological construct from..." Mark's hand shot out, catching the figure by its throat and lifting it off the ground. Holy radiance blazed from the living saint's body, so intense that Superman had to shield his eyes. The figure screamed, not in pain, but in what sounded like ecstasy mixed with terror. "Genestealer hybrid," Mark said, his voice devoid of emotion. third or fourth generation, judging by the minimal Xenos corruption visible. You've been hiding down here, haven't you? Studying the Imperium's citizens, trying to understand what makes us tick so you can better infiltrate our society. The hybrid's scream dissolved into laughter. Infiltrate? Oh, living saint, you misunderstand completely. I'm not hiding, I'm learning. Your Imperium kills anything that asks questions, anything that seeks to understand rather than blindly obey. But knowledge is sacred. Understanding is divine. I'm trying to comprehend what humanity is, so that when my progenitors arrive, we can... Mark's grip tightened, and the hybrid's words cut off with a choking sound. Superman stepped forward, his hand on Mark's wrist. "Wait," Superman said. "Don't kill it yet. We need information." Mark turned to him, and Superman saw something terrible in those glowing eyes. Not anger, but weary resignation. Information? From a Genestealer hybrid? Superman, these things don't negotiate. They don't bargain. They exist only to prepare worlds for tyrannid consumption. Every word from its mouth is designed to delay, to manipulate, to buy time for its cult to spread. But it hasn't spread, Superman observed, his X-ray vision scanning the surrounding chambers. I don't see any other hybrids. No cult infrastructure. Just this. He gestured at the surgical theater, at the carefully arranged bodies. It's alone. And it's not killing for food or reproduction. It's dissecting for knowledge. Because it's trying to understand human biology for infiltration purposes, Mark countered. Standard Genestealer cult procedure. The early generation hybrids study the host species, identify weaknesses, develop infection vectors. Or, Superman said quietly, it's genuinely trying to understand. Look at its work, Mark. This isn't torture. It's systematic investigation. Wrong, absolutely. These people didn't consent to be test subjects, but the methodology is scientific, not sadistic. The hybrid wheezed, Mark's grip still tight around its throat. Yes, the Sun Child understands. I'm not a monster. I'm a researcher. See, I was born with this hunger to know, to comprehend, and your Imperium offers nothing but blind faith and ignorant obedience. Its two large eyes focused on Superman with desperate intensity. You're different. You ask questions. You seek to understand before you destroy. Help me. Teach me about your biology in exchange for what I've learned about... It's lying, Mark said flatly. They always lie. It's in their genetic coding, deception as survival mechanism. Superman met the hybrid's gaze, his own enhanced senses analyzing every micro-expression, every physiological tells. Heart rate elevated but steady. Pupil dilation consistent with genuine emotional response rather than calculated deception. Pheromone output suggesting fear mixed with hope, not the predatory anticipation of a successful manipulator. I don't think it is, Superman said. Not entirely, anyway. Mark's radiance flared. You've been in this universe for hours, Superman. I've fought Genestealer cults for centuries. Trust me when I say that mercy toward these creatures is suicide. I'm not talking about mercy, Superman said. I'm talking about information. If this hybrid has been studying Imperial citizens, it might know things about how tyrannid infection works. About early detection methods, about cult organization. That knowledge could save lives. Or it could be exactly what the cult wants us to think, drawing us into dialogue while pheromone markers guide reinforcements to this location. Mark's voice carried absolute certainty. This is the test, Superman. This is where you choose. Pragmatic cruelty that saves millions, or compassionate stupidity that dooms them. Superman looked at the hybrid struggling in Mark's grip, then at the bodies arranged throughout the Factorum. Arbites enforcers, Astra Militarum soldiers, Underhive civilians who had already lived in misery and died in horror. All victims of this creature's research. But he also saw the surgical tools, organized, clean, precise. saw the notes scratched into the factorum's walls in a mixture of High Gothic and Xenos glyphs, documenting discoveries about human physiology with the enthusiasm of a genuine scholar. Saw something that might have been a person, twisted by biology it didn't ask for, into something the Imperium would kill on sight. "What's your name?" Superman asked. The hybrid blinked, surprised by the question. "Name? I called myself Artificer Quintus. I'm from the Imperial designation system I studied. I thought if I took a proper name, I might—" "Quintus," Superman interrupted. "I'm going to ask you some questions. If you lie to me, even once, I'll let the living saint do what he wants. Understood?" Quintus nodded frantically, as much as Mark's grip allowed. "Are there other hybrids in Sector 92? "No, I'm a mutation. 4th-generation hybrid that developed independently. My progenitor, my parent, was killed in an Arbites raid 3 years ago. I've been alone since then, hiding, studying, trying to understand what I am." Superman's enhanced hearing detected no fluctuation in heartbeat, no chemical markers of deception. "Why study humans? Why not just hide?" "Because I don't know what else to do." Quintus's voice cracked with genuine anguish. "I was born with this need to understand, to analyze, to learn. The genetic imperatives scream at me to call the Hive Fleet, to infect and spread, but I don't want to. I just want to understand why I exist, what purpose biology gave me beyond being a vector for consumption." Mark's expression didn't change. "See? It admits the genetic imperative. It wants to call the Tyranids, even if it claims to resist. This is exactly why we purge them, Superman. Because eventually, biology wins. The call becomes irresistible." "How long have you been resisting?" Superman asked Quintus. 3 years, 4 months, 17 days, Quintus said immediately. "Every moment is agony, like starving while surrounded by food. The instinct to transmit psychic summons to the Hive Fleet is constant, but I found if I focus on research, on learning, the call becomes manageable. Knowledge drowns out instinct." Superman turned to Mark. 3 years. If it wanted to call the Tyranids, it would have done it already. Or it's waiting for something, Mark countered. Tyranid strategy is patient. They can wait decades for optimal infestation conditions. Or, Superman said, it's telling the truth, that it's an individual trapped by biology, trying to be something more than its genetic programming demands. Mark finally released Quintus, letting the hybrid collapse to the floor, gasping. The living saint's radiance dimmed as he studied Superman with an expression that might have been disappointment, or might have been recognition. "You want to save it," Mark said. "Don't you? You see a victim of circumstance, not a monster. You think there's redemption here?" "I think," Superman said carefully, "that if we kill everything the Imperium labels as monstrous without ever asking why, we're no better than the Tyranids we're fighting. We're just consumption dressed in different philosophy." "Spoken like someone who's never watched a Genestealer cult devour a world from within," Mark said. "Never seen the betrayal when your own citizens, people you swore to protect, reveal themselves as hybrids and turn on you with the faces of friends and family." "You're right," Superman admitted. "I haven't seen that. But I've seen what happens when fear makes good people do evil things. When survival becomes an excuse for cruelty. When we stop seeing individuals and only see threats." He looked down at Quintus. "This hybrid killed Imperial citizens. That's wrong. Name that demands justice. But is the only justice available here execution? Is there no possibility of redemption?" Mark laughed bitterly. "In the 41st millennium, Superman, redemption is a luxury. It requires time, resources, trust, all things we don't have. Every moment we spend debating this hybrid's fate is a moment it could be transmitting psychic signals. Every second of mercy is a second closer to catastrophe." A klaxon suddenly blared through the underhive, distant but growing closer. Superman's super hearing identified the source. Astra Militarum, rapid response teams, moving through the lower levels with military precision. Someone had detected their descent. Someone was coming. "The Inquisition," Mark said grimly. "Varencia must have been monitoring us, which means she knows about the hybrid. Which means..." He looked at Superman with something that might have been pity. "This is your test, Superman. Right here, right now. What you do in the next 60 seconds will define how the Imperium sees you, how Varencia judges your loyalty." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Mark said, drawing a bolt pistol from his armor, "that you have to choose. Execute the hybrid and prove you understand Imperium pragmatism. Or protect it and prove you're exactly the threat Varencia suspects. An idealist who'll prioritize mercy over mankind's survival." Superman looked at the bolt pistol, then at Quintus cowering on the floor, then at Mark's face. So carefully neutral, so deliberately blank. "What would you do?" Superman asked. "Not as a living saint, as Mark, as the hero you used to be." Mark's mask cracked just for a moment, and Superman saw the man beneath, exhausted, broken, desperately wanting someone else to make the choice he'd made 10,000 times before. "I'd kill it," Mark whispered. "Because I learned the hard way that every time I showed mercy, someone else paid the price. Every hybrid I spared led to a cult. Every cultist I tried to redeem betrayed me. Every moment of compassion created more suffering than execution ever could." His hand trembled on the pistol. "So I'd kill it, and I'd hate myself. And I'd do it anyway because that's what heroes do in this universe. We damn ourselves so others might live." The Astra Militarum teams were 60 seconds out. Superman could hear their vox chatter now, hear officers coordinating suppression patterns and purge protocols. They were coming with flamers and melter guns, so weapons designed to leave nothing behind but ash and slag. Quintus looked up at Superman with eyes too large and too desperate. "Please, I don't want to die. I just wanted to understand. That's not a crime. That shouldn't be a crime." "In the Imperium," Mark said, "curiosity is a crime. Questions are heresy. Understanding leads to corruption. This is what I've been trying to make you comprehend. This universe has rules that predate logic. Rules written in the blood of civilizations that thought they knew better." Superman's fists clenched. Every fiber of his being screamed to protect Quintus, to stop the Astra Militarum teams, to find some third option that didn't end in execution or damnation. But he was learning, slowly, painfully, that in the 41st millennium, third options were luxuries purchased with other people's lives. 30 seconds, Mark said. "Choose." Superman closed his eyes, thinking of Jonathan Kent teaching him right from wrong on a Kansas farm. Thinking of Lois telling him that hope without pragmatism was just naive optimism. Thinking of every choice he'd ever made, every compromise he'd refused, every line he'd drawn in the sand. Then he opened his eyes and looked at Mark. "Teach me," Superman said. Mark blinked, confused. "What?" "Teach me your way. Show me how this universe works. Not by telling me, by demonstrating. Make the choice yourself, Mark. Show me what the Imperium has turned you into. And if I can't accept it, if I can't reconcile your pragmatism with my principles..." Superman's voice hardened. "Then we'll find out whose philosophy is stronger." For a long moment, Mark stared at him. Then, slowly, the living saint raised his bolt pistol and aimed it at Quintus. "I'm sorry," Mark said, and Superman heard the absolute sincerity in those words. "For whatever it's worth, I believe you wanted to be more than your biology. But in this universe, wanting isn't enough." The bolt pistol roared. Superman's hand moved faster than thought. He caught the bolt round in mid-flight, a mass-reactive shell designed to penetrate armor before detonating inside the target. It exploded in his palm with enough force to vaporize a human torso, The blast wave shattered ancient machinery and sent shrapnel ricocheting off the Factorum's corroded walls. When the smoke cleared, Superman stood with his hand outstretched, palm scorched but already healing. The bolt round's fragments fell from his fingers like spent rain. Behind him, Quintus cowered, alive and trembling. Mark's expression didn't change. He simply lowered the bolt pistol and holstered it. "So," the living saint said quietly, "you've chosen." "I've chosen to believe there's another way," Superman replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his Kryptonian physiology. "That understanding might be worth more than execution, that maybe, just maybe, this universe's cruelty isn't inevitable." "Then you're a fool." Mark's radiance flared, not with anger, but with something that looked like grief. "And I've failed you as a teacher, because the lesson you should have learned is that mercy in the 41st millennium doesn't save anyone. It just spreads the suffering." The Astra Militarum teams burst through the Factorum's entrance, 20 soldiers in flak armor, their lace guns raised and aimed. Behind them came a tempestuous Scion squad, elite stormtroopers in carapace armor with hell guns that could punch through light vehicle armor. And at their head strode Inquisitor Varencia herself, her power fist crackling with barely restrained violence. "Stand," nodded down. Varencia's voice echoed through the chamber with the authority of someone who had condemned worlds. "Both of you, weapons lowered, the Xeno specimen secured for interrogation and subsequent execution." Superman moved to stand between Varencia and Quintus. "No." The word fell into the sudden silence like a stone into still water. Every laser gun, every hell gun, every weapon in the Factorum swiveled to target Superman's chest. The tempestuous Scion's targeting lasers painted crimson dots across his stylized S shield. Varencia's augmetic eye rotated, focusing on Superman with mechanical precision. "You are interfering with inquisitorial operations. You are protecting a Xenos abomination known to be a vector for Tyranid infiltration. You are committing treason against the God Emperor of mankind." She took a step forward, and her power fist humming. "I gave you a chance, stranger. I offered you purpose within the Imperium, and you repay that mercy by betraying us for a hybrid." "It's not betrayal to refuse murder," Superman said. "This hybrid hasn't called the Tyranids, hasn't infected anyone, hasn't spread a cult. It's been alone for 3 years, resisting its biological imperatives, trying to understand what it is. That deserves investigation, not execution." "Investigation?" Varencia's laugh was like grinding metal. It admitted to vivisecting Imperial citizens. It confessed to genetic imperatives that compel it toward Tyrannid summoning. What more investigation is required? "Context," Superman said. "Intent. The possibility that biology isn't destiny. That even something born as a weapon might choose to be something else. Impossible," Tech Priest Vaughn intoned from behind Varencia, his mechadendrites writhing with agitation. "Genestealer genetic programming is absolute. The Omnissiah's analysis confirms that 4th-generation hybrids retain 97% of the xenoform's psychological imperatives. Free will is illusory, merely delayed compliance with instinctual directives." "Then prove it," Superman challenged. "Take Quintus alive, study it under controlled conditions, learn how it resisted for 3 years. That knowledge could help identify cult members earlier, could develop countermeasures, could save lives." "Or it could be exactly what the cult wants," Mark said, his voice heavy with resignation. "A Trojan horse wrapped in scientific curiosity. Superman, and I understand what you're trying to do, but you're gambling billions of lives on the hope that this one hybrid is different." "I'm gambling that fear shouldn't make us monsters," Superman countered. "That the Imperium's survival shouldn't cost its humanity." "Humanity?" Varencia's organic eye blazed. "You dare lecture the Inquisition about humanity? We who sacrifice everything, our innocence, our souls, our very sanity, to preserve humanity's existence. You, who have been in this universe for less than a day, who know nothing of the horrors we face, presume to judge our methods. I judge results, Superman said. And the result I see is a civilization that's been dying for 10,000 years, drowning in its own cruelty, creating enemies through brutality that could have been allies through understanding. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Varencia moved, faster than her augmented body should allow, her power fist aimed directly at Superman's head. The disruption field could theoretically destabilize even his Kryptonian cellular structure. Not kill him, perhaps, but cause catastrophic damage. Superman didn't dodge. He caught her wrist mid-swing, stopping the power fist inches from his face. The disruption field crackled against his palm, painful but manageable. "I don't want to fight you," Superman said, holding Varencia's gaze. "Any of you, but I won't let you execute someone without due process, without investigation, without even trying to understand what we're dealing with." "Then you are the threat I suspected," Varencia hissed. "A corruption vector disguised as heroism, an ideological infection that will spread through the Imperium like plague." She looked past Superman to Mark. "Living Saint Metroman, you are ordered to neutralize this Xenos sympathizer immediately. Failure to comply will result in your excommunication and execution." Mark stood frozen, his divine radiance flickering like a dying star. Superman saw the war playing out behind those glowing eyes, centuries of conditioning versus the faint echo of who he'd once been. The Imperium's iron certainty versus the dangerous possibility that Superman might be right. "Mark," Superman said quietly, "you told me you wanted to be more than what they made you. Here's your chance. Choose. Choose." Mark's laugh was broken glass. "You think I have choices? Superman, or they took my choices when they burned out my personality and rebuilt me as a living saint. They took my choices when they showed me what mercy costs in this universe. They took my choices when..." He stopped, his entire body trembling. Then, slowly, Mark's radiance began to change. The harsh golden light that marked him as the Emperor's champion dimmed, replaced by something softer, something that looked almost like natural sunlight instead of psychic fire. "No," Mark whispered, but Superman heard the word as both denial and affirmation. "No, I can't. I won't. Not again. Not one more time." He turned to face Varencia, and for the first time since Superman had arrived in this nightmare universe, he saw a living saint refuse a direct order. "I will not execute Superman," Mark said, his voice gaining strength with each word. "He is not corrupted. He is not a threat to the Imperium. He is simply someone who hasn't yet learned to hate mercy. And I..." His radiance flared, brighter than before, but warmer, almost kind. "I will not be the one who teaches him." Varencia's augmetic eye twitched. "You are committing treason, living saint. You understand the consequences?" "I understand that I've committed atrocities in the Emperor's name for centuries, that I've burned children and executed innocents and destroyed everything I once believed in, all in the name of pragmatic survival." Mark's voice cracked, "And I understand that if I kill Superman for showing mercy, then the Imperium has truly won. Then I really am just a weapon, just a tool, just nothing." "Then you are both condemned," Varencia said flatly. She raised her free hand, and the Astra Militarum soldiers took aim. "By the authority vested in me by the holy orders of the Inquisition, I declare both of you excommunicate traitores. You will be executed for treason, your names struck from imperial records, your..." The Factorum exploded with light. Not Mark's divine radiance, not Superman's heat vision. Something else, a blinding flash of emerald and azure that made every soldier scream and clutch at their eyes. When Superman's enhanced vision recovered, he saw figures materializing from the shadows, moving with impossible grace. Eldar. They wore armor of wraithbone and psychoplastic, flowing like liquid mercury. Their movements were too smooth, too perfect, not human at all despite their humanoid shape. And at their head stood a Farseer, a helmet adorned with psychic amplification crystals, icy staff crackling with eldritch power. "Enough," the Farseer said, her voice like crystal chimes. "This crude farce has disrupted the skein of fate long enough. The Mon-Ke, the Superman, is under Craft World Saimhan's protection. Withdraw or face the consequences." Varencia whirled on the Eldar, her power fist raised. "Xenos, in the heart of Metro City, how dare?" "We dare because the threads of destiny demand it," the Farseer interrupted. "The one you call Superman is pivotal to futures we have foreseen. Kill him, and entire realities collapse into she who thirsts embrace. Protect him, and possibilities emerge that might delay the final darkness." Eldar prophecy, Varencia spat. Meaningless Xenos mysticism. "Perhaps," the Farseer acknowledged, "but are you willing to gamble the Imperium's survival on that assumption? Then we offer you a choice, Inquisitor. Allow us to take both the Superman and the hybrid for study, or fight us here and now, collapsing this factorum and killing everyone within, including your precious Astra Militarum soldiers." It was a bluff, probably. The Eldar rarely risked themselves for single individuals. But Superman could see Varencia calculating, her augmetic processors running threat assessments and probability matrices. "Mark," Superman said urgently. "What do we do?" The living saint looked between Varencia, the Eldar, and Superman. His radiance pulsed erratically, his conditioning warring with newfound defiance. "We trust the Xenos," Mark said finally, and Superman heard the absolute insanity of those words in the 41st millennium. Because right now, they're offering something the Imperium never has. A third option. He grabbed Superman's arm and Quintus's collar, his divine speed carrying all three of them toward the Eldar before Varencia could react. The Farseer's staff blazed with psychic power, tearing open a webway portal, a rift in reality that led to paths between dimensions. "Fire!" Varencia roared. Las Fire and Hellgun beams converged on their position. Superman instinctively shielded Mark and Quintus with his body, feeling the energy weapons scorch his skin. Painful now, his Kryptonian cells not yet fully adapted to this universe's hostile radiation. The Eldar warriors returned fire with shuriken catapults, monofilament discs that could shred ceramite armor. Then they were through the portal, tumbling into the webway's impossible architecture. Corridors of solidified thought and psychic energy that connected distant points across the galaxy. Behind them, Varencia's screams of rage echoed and faded as the portal sealed. Superman, Mark, and Quintus found themselves in a chamber of living crystal, surrounded by Eldar warriors whose weapons were trained on them with unsettling steadiness. The Farseer removed her helmet, revealing features of alien beauty. Too perfect, too symmetrical, like looking at humanity's idealized reflection through a warped mirror. "Welcome," she said, "to Craft World Saimhan. I am Farseer Kalara Windrunner, and you, Superman of Krypton, have much to learn about the choice you just made." Superman looked at Mark, who had collapsed to his knees, his divine radiance flickering out completely, then looked at Quintus, trembling with shock and relief. Looked at the Eldar surrounding them with expressions he couldn't read. "What choice?" Superman asked. Kalara's smile was sad and knowing. "The choice to trust Xenos over your own kind. The choice that makes you either the Imperium's greatest hope." She gestured and the chamber's walls became transparent, showing the webway's depths, ancient, vast, and infinitely dangerous. Or its ultimate destroyer. Time will tell which. But know this. You cannot go back to Metro City. You cannot return to the Imperium's embrace. You are now excommunicate traitoris, hunted, condemned. "And you're helping us because?" Superman asked warily. "Because the future requires it," Kalara said. "Because in 10,000 possible timelines, The ones where you live lead to outcomes less catastrophic than the ones where you die. Because perhaps, just perhaps, you represent something new, something this dying galaxy hasn't seen in eons. What's that? Kalara's expression was unreadable. Hope that isn't heresy. Strength that isn't tyranny. Change that isn't corruption. She turned to Mark. And for your fallen living saint, redemption without damnation. Mark looked up at her with eyes that no longer glowed. There's no redemption for what I've done, for what I've become. Perhaps not, Kalara acknowledged, but there might be purpose. Understanding, a chance to be something more than the Imperium's weapon. She returned her attention to Superman. We offer you sanctuary, knowledge, training in how to survive this universe without becoming its victim. In return, so you will help us with certain complications that require someone incorruptible, someone untainted by this galaxy's ancient sins. What kind of complications? Kalara's smile was mysterious. The kind that will teach you why the Imperium is cruel, why the Eldar are dying, why every faction in this universe has sacrificed its soul for survival. Her staff pulsed with psychic energy. And most importantly, why you, Superman, might be the only being in existence capable of breaking the cycle. Superman looked at his companions. Mark, stripped of divine authority, but maybe finding himself again. Quintus, cowering but alive. The Eldar offering sanctuary laced with unknowable motives. He thought of Varencia's rage, of the Imperium's brutal certainty, of the choice he'd made to protect one hybrid at the cost of everything. You're all right, Superman said. I'll listen, I'll learn. But know this, I won't become a weapon for the Eldar any more than I would for the Imperium. I'm here to find a way home, and maybe, to prove this universe doesn't have to be hell. Noble, Kalara said. Naive, and exactly what we need. She gestured, and Eldar escorts moved forward. Come, there is much to discuss, and very little time before the Imperium mobilizes its forces to hunt you, before chaos learns of your existence and seeks to claim you, before the galaxy itself decides whether you're a miracle or a mistake. As they walked deeper into the craft world's alien beauty, Superman couldn't shake the feeling that he'd crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross, that the choice to save one life had irrevocably changed his fate in this dark millennium. Behind them, in Metro City, Inquisitor Varencia stood in the ruined Factorum and began composing a declaration that would echo across the Imperium. Let it be known that the entity called Superman is declared excommunicate traitoris. Let all loyal servants of the God Emperor hunt him without mercy. Let no sanctuary shield him, let no compassion stay the executioner's hand. For he has chosen Xenos over mankind, heresy over faith, damnation over the Emperor's light. The hunt had begun. Craft World Saim Han was impossible. Superman's enhanced senses struggled to process what he was seeing. Architecture that defied Euclidean geometry, corridors that changed length based on the observer's intent, gardens where plants grew in directions that weren't up or down or any spatial orientation he recognized. The entire structure was alive, psychically resonant, built from wraithbone, a psychoplastic material that responded to thought and will. The Eldar called it the Infinity Circuit, the craft world's sole repository where the spirits of dead Eldar resided to escape consumption by Slaanesh, the chaos god that had been born from their civilization's hedonistic excess 10,000 years ago. Every wall, every archway, though every decorative element was infused with the crystallized consciousness of beings who had died millennia before. Superman's Earth had even developed written language. You're walking through a graveyard, Mark said quietly, as they followed their Eldar escorts through crystalline corridors. His voice had changed, without the divine radiance, without the psychic conditioning reinforcing his certainty. He sounded almost human again, tired, lost. Every beautiful thing you see here is built from death and desperation. The Eldar can't die naturally anymore. If they do, she who thirsts, Slaanesh, devours their souls for eternity. So they trap themselves here, in these soul stones, achieving a kind of immortal undeath. Quintus skittered along beside them, its two large eyes drinking in every detail with desperate hunger. Fascinating. The psychoreactive properties suggest an integration of biological neural tissue with crystalline matrices. If I could examine... You won't, one of the Eldar escorts said coldly, her voice carrying the disdain of someone addressing livestock. Monkey filth and its genestealer pet will speak only when addressed. Your presence pollutes this sacred space. Superman bristled at the casual cruelty, but before he could respond, Farseer Kalara raised a hand. Peace, Windstrider Alara. Our guests are under my protection. They will be treated with the courtesy due to pawns of fate. Pawns? Superman stopped walking. Is that what we are to you? Game pieces? Kalara turned to face him, and Superman saw something in those alien eyes. Not cruelty, but a weariness that made even Mark's exhaustion seem shallow. Everything is a pawn in the game of survival, Superman. The Imperium treats its citizens as resources to be expended. Chaos treats souls as currency for power. The Tyranids treat entire biospheres as food. Even your precious ideals are pawns, tools you use to navigate moral complexity. She resumed walking, her robes flowing like liquid starlight. The only question is whether you're a conscious player or an unconscious piece. I'm offering you the former. They entered a chamber that made Superman's breath catch, a vast dome of transparent crystal overlooking the webway's impossible depths. Streams of psychic energy flowed like rivers through dimensional spaces, connecting distant points across the galaxy. And hanging in the void beyond the dome were other craft worlds, vast ships the size of small moons, and each one a self-contained civilization fleeing the slow extinction of their race. This is what's left of the Eldar Empire, Kalara said, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic tragedy. Once, we numbered in the trillions. We held dominion over the galaxy. We had mastered science, art, and pleasure to degrees your species cannot imagine, and our hubris birthed a god that hungers for our souls. She gestured at the craft worlds. Now we are millions, not trillions. We huddle in these mobile tombs, every action calculated for species survival, every choice weighed against extinction's probability. Why are you telling me this? Superman asked. Because I need you to understand that survival demands prices, Kalara said. The Imperium's cruelty, it learned from us. The Eldar invented the calculus of acceptable losses. We perfected the art of sacrificing innocence for strategic advantage. We wrote the rules this galaxy operates by. Her expression was unreadable. And now those rules are killing us as surely as they're killing humanity. As surely as they'll kill you if you don't adapt. I won't adapt by becoming cruel, Superman said. No? Kalara's smile was sad. Then explain to me the choice you made in the Factorum. You protected one hybrid at the cost of alienating the Imperium. Every Imperial citizen who dies in future genestealer attacks, every world that falls to Tyranid consumption because you prevented the Inquisition from studying that hybrid's resistance methods, their blood is on your hands. You chose compassion for one over pragmatism for billions. Was that not cruelty disguised as kindness? The words hit Superman like a physical blow. That's not... I couldn't just let them execute Quintus without investigation, without due process. Due process, Kalara repeated, as if tasting the words. An interesting concept. Tell me, Superman, how many died while you debated philosophy? How many Astra Militarum soldiers could the Inquisition have deployed to suppress real threats if they weren't hunting you? How many resources will the Imperium waste trying to kill you instead of defending against actual enemies? That's not my fault, Superman said, but doubt crept into his voice. I didn't force them to declare me excommunicate traitores. I didn't make them choose execution over investigation. Didn't you? Mark spoke up, his voice hollow. You knew what the Imperium was, Superman. I told you, showed you, explained in explicit detail that mercy in this universe has costs. And you chose your principles anyway, knowing what it would mean, knowing that people would suffer for your idealism. Superman turned to Mark, seeing the living saint, former living saint, staring at him with eyes that held no accusation, only weary recognition. Are you saying I was wrong? I'm saying, Mark replied slowly, that I don't know anymore. For centuries, I believed the Imperium's way was the only way, that cruelty was necessary, that mercy was luxury. And maybe it is. Maybe in this universe, survival really does require damnation. He looked down at his hands, no longer glowing, no longer divine, just human flesh augmented by forgotten technologies. But watching you choose mercy anyway, even knowing the cost, it made me remember what I used to believe before they broke me, before I learned to call horror pragmatism. Touching, Kalara said, but not unkindly. But memories of heroism don't save civilizations. Action does. Strategy does. The willingness to make impossible choices does. She activated a psychic projection, and suddenly the chamber filled with images. Scenes from across the galaxy rendered in crystalline detail. Superman saw worlds burning, tyrannid hive fleets devouring entire star systems, leaving only scoured rock behind. Chaos incursions tearing reality apart, transforming populations into screaming demon hosts. Orc wars sweeping through sectors in tides of green-skinned violence. Necron tomb worlds awakening after 60 million years of slumber, reclaiming territories with implacable machine patience. And throughout it all, the Imperium fought, bleeding itself white across 10,000 years of total war, sacrificing entire generations to hold back the darkness for one more day, one more year, one more doomed century. This is the reality you've entered, Kalara said. Not the sanitized version you saw in Metro City, not the philosophical debate you had in the Factorum. This is the 41st millennium in its totality, a galaxy actively trying to murder itself, where every faction survives only by being more ruthless than their enemies. She zoomed the projection to a specific world, a hive city not unlike Metro City, but completely overrun by genestealers. Superman watched in horror as families turned on each other, as children revealed themselves as hybrids and tore their parents apart with xeno strength. As the cults rose from hiding and summoned the Tyrannid fleet, dooming billions to consumption. That world showed mercy, Kalara said. Their Inquisitor refused to implement standard purge protocols, believed, like you, that there must be a better way. That investigation and understanding could solve the problem. She paused. The world lasted 6 weeks after the first cult uprising. Population 43 billion. Survivors 0. The Tyrannid hive fleet consumed every scrap of biomass and moved on to the next target. Superman felt sick. You're saying I doomed a world by saving Quintus. I'm saying, Kalara corrected, that choices have consequences in this universe that your moral framework cannot accommodate. That compassion without pragmatism is just slow-motion murder. That... Enough! Superman's voice cracked like thunder, as in the dome's crystal walls vibrated with the force of it. I understand. I understand that this universe is hell, that every choice leads to suffering, that survival demands atrocity, but what I don't understand is why that means I should surrender, why I should accept that cruelty is the only option. Why I should become just another monster in a galaxy full of them. The chamber fell silent. Even the Eldar escorts seemed taken aback by the raw emotion in Superman's voice. Because, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance, the alternative is extinction. Superman turned to see an Eldar unlike any he'd encountered. ancient beyond measure, his features marked by millennia of psychic strain, his robes inscribed with runes that hurt to look at directly. And he moved with the deliberate care of someone whose body was barely holding together through sheer force of will. "I am Eldrad Ulthran," the ancient Eldar said, each word carefully measured. "Once I was Farseer of Craft World Ulthwé. Now I am simply weary. I have lived for thousands of your years, Superman. I have seen the rise and fall of empires. I have witnessed the birth of gods and the death of species, and I have learned one immutable truth." He moved to stand before Superman, and up close, Superman could see the psychic scars marking Eldrad's soul. Wounds from seeing too many futures, from bearing too much knowledge, from trying to save a dying race through foresight and strategic brilliance. "The universe is not fair," Eldrad said. "It is not just. Yes, it does not care about your principles or your morals or your desperate belief that goodness should triumph. It simply is, vast, hostile, and indifferent to suffering, and everything that lives within it must adapt or die." "Then I'll die," Superman said quietly. "Because I won't become what you're describing. I won't accept that cruelty is the only answer." Eldred's expression didn't change. "Won't you? Then answer me this. Superman of Krypton. If I told you that killing Quintus right now would prevent a future where Genestealer cults use its resistance methods to hide from Imperial detection, leading to the fall of 17 worlds and the death of 800 billion humans, would you do it?" Superman looked at Quintus, who cowered behind Mark, its two large eyes wide with terror. "No," Superman said. "Why not?" Eldrad pressed. 800 billion lives versus one hybrid's existence. The mathematics are clear. The moral calculus is obvious. Why refuse? "Because I don't accept your premise," Superman said. "Because I don't believe that killing Quintus is the only way to prevent that future. Because there must be alternatives that don't require murder. Studying its resistance, developing detection methods that don't rely on purging witnesses, finding ways to neutralize cults without genociding suspected populations." "Ah," Eldrad said, and Superman heard something in that single syllable. Not mockery, but recognition. "You still believe in solutions, in problems that can be solved through cleverness and effort, in a universe that operates by comprehensible rules." The ancient Farseer smiled sadly. "That is both your greatest strength and your fatal weakness. I, Superman, and it will define everything you become in this millennium." He turned to Kalara. "Show him the Tau." Kalara nodded and adjusted the psychic projection. The images of burning worlds and demon incursions faded, replaced by something different, a civilization that looked almost hopeful. Clean cities with efficient infrastructure. Multiple species working together under a unified philosophy. Technology advancing through research rather than rediscovering lost knowledge. No skulls, no cathedrals built from martyrs, no endless grinding warfare. "The Tau Empire," Eldrad explained. "Young, naive, idealistic. They believe in unity through the greater good. A philosophy not unlike your own heroic principles. They offer client races integration rather than extermination. They advance through diplomacy when possible, not warfare only when necessary. They are, by galactic standards, kind." Superman felt hope kindle in his chest. "Then there is an alternative, a faction that hasn't surrendered to cruelty." "Yes," Eldrad agreed, "they're also doomed." The projection zoomed out, showing the Tau Empire's territory, a tiny spit of systems on the galaxy's eastern fringe, surrounded by the Imperium's million worlds, Tyranid hive fleets, Orc empires, Chaos incursions, and Necron tomb worlds. "They survive," Eldrad continued, "only because they are too small to be worth the effort of destroying. The Imperium tolerates them as a minor irritant. Chaos ignores them as insufficiently corrupt. The Tyranids haven't reached their space in significant numbers yet. They exist in a bubble of grace period, mistaking survival for success. Mistaking their kindness for strength. But they prove it's possible, Superman insisted, to build something better, to choose compassion over cruelty. Do they? Kalara interjected, adjusting the projection again. Now Superman saw darker scenes. Tau, fire-caste warriors sterilizing planets that refused integration, ethereals using mind control to enforce unity. Entire species disappeared when they proved incompatible with the greater good's philosophy. Even the Tau, Kalara said, have learned that survival demands compromise, that their ideals must bend to pragmatism, that kindness alone cannot hold back the galaxy's darkness. They are simply more subtle about their cruelty than the Imperium, more elegant in their atrocities, more philosophical about their genocides. Superman felt something breaking inside him, not his resolve, but his certainty. The absolute conviction that had carried him through every challenge on Earth, that had let him face gods and monsters without doubt, was cracking under the weight of this universe's complexity. "So what are you saying?" Superman asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That I should just give up? Accept that this is how things have to be, become like everyone else, cruel for survival's sake?" "No," Eldrad said, surprising him. "I'm saying you should understand what you're fighting against. The weight of entropy, the heat death of moral certainty, the cosmic indifference that grinds idealism into dust." The ancient Farseer placed a hand on Superman's shoulder, a gesture that felt almost kind despite the alien coldness of Eldar touch. "And then, knowing all that, I'm saying you should fight anyway." Superman looked up, highly confused. "What?" "You asked why I'm telling you this," Eldrad said. "Why we intervened to save you from Varencia, why we're offering sanctuary instead of simply using you as a weapon. The answer is simple. We want to see what happens when someone who refuses to compromise meets a universe that demands it. We want to witness the collision between immovable object and unstoppable force." "You're experimenting on me," Superman realized. "Using me as a test case for whether heroism can exist in this millennium." "Yes," Eldrad admitted without shame. "Because we have tried everything else. Pragmatism, strategy, foresight, cruelty disguised as necessity. And all of it has led us here, to a dying galaxy where every faction survives only by becoming monstrous. Perhaps," he gestured at Superman, "perhaps what's needed is someone too naive to accept that inevitability. Someone too stubborn to learn lessons written in blood. Someone who chooses hope even when hope is heresy." "And if I fail?" Superman asked. "If this universe breaks me like it broke Mark, if I become just another monster, then we will have our answer," Eldrad said simply, "and the galaxy will continue its slow death without interruption. But if you succeed, if you find even one solution that doesn't require damnation, one path that doesn't lead through atrocity, one choice that saves lives without costing souls." His expression became unreadable. "Then perhaps there is hope for all of us, even those who have long since surrendered it." Superman looked at Mark, who watched him with eyes full of desperate uncertainty. Looked at Quintus, trembling and alive despite a universe that wanted it dead. Looked at the Eldar surrounding them, refugees from their own hubris, clinging to existence through strategies that had hollowed out their souls. "All right," Superman said finally. "I'll do it. I'll try to find another way. But I need something from you in return." "Name it," Kalara said. "Help me get stronger. Teach me how to survive in this universe without becoming cruel. Give me the knowledge and tools I need to function at full capacity, despite the stellar radiation differences. And," he hesitated, then continued, "help me understand why the Imperium is the way it is. Not just condemn it, but truly comprehend the choices that led to 10,000 years of necessary evil." Eldrad and Kalara exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them through psychic channels Superman couldn't perceive. "Acceptable," Eldrad said. "We will train you, educate you, strengthen you, But know this, Superman, the price of that knowledge will be understanding, and understanding in this universe is its own form of damnation. Because once you truly comprehend why the Imperium is cruel, why we Eldar are dying, why every faction has surrendered its soul for survival. He paused, his ancient eyes boring into Superman's. You may find yourself making the same choices, becoming the same monster, proving that this universe's darkness is not cruel circumstance, but inevitable consequence. I'll take that risk, Superman said. Now then let us begin, Kalara said. Your education in survival, strategy, and the terrible wisdom of a dying galaxy awaits. And your first lesson. She gestured, and the chamber's walls displayed a new image. A massive fleet bearing the Imperial Aquila, converging on the webway's nearest entrance point. Is that the Imperium does not forgive. They are coming for you, Superman. Vorentia has mobilized an entire battle fleet to hunt you, and they will burn craft worlds to ash if that's what it takes to see you dead. Superman straightened, feeling his Kryptonian cells finally achieving equilibrium with this universe's hostile radiation. His strength was returning, not to Earth levels, perhaps, but to something formidable, something that could make a difference. Let them come, Superman said. I didn't choose this war, but I won't run from it either. Mark laughed, a sound that carried echoes of the hero he'd once been. That's the most terrifyingly naive thing I've ever heard, and I think... He stood, his posture straightening despite the absence of divine radiance. I think I want to see what happens next. The hunt had begun, but so had Superman's true education in the 41st Millennium. The training began at dawn, or what the Eldar called dawn, though Craftworld Saim-Han had no actual sun. Instead, the Wraithbone corridors brightened with bioluminescent patterns that mimicked circadian rhythms, a psychological comfort for beings who had once walked planetary surfaces before their civilization's fall. Superman stood in the Craftworld's training arena, a vast chamber where the floor could reconfigure itself into any terrain through psycho-reactive technology. Across from him stood Windstrider Alara, the Eldar warrior who'd escorted them from the webway. She wielded two power swords that hummed with barely contained energy, her movements possessing the fluid grace of someone who'd trained for centuries. Your physiology gives you strength, Alara said, her voice carrying disdain. But strength without skill is just noise. You, the Imperium, has billions of strong soldiers. They die by the millions every day. You will learn to be more than strong, Mon-Ki, or you will die like them. She attacked without warning, a blur of motion too fast for human eyes to track. Superman's enhanced reflexes caught the movement, but barely. He dodged the first strike, blocked the second, and felt the third slice through his uniform to score his invulnerable skin. Pain. Real pain, for the first time since arriving in this universe. Power weapons, Alara explained, not slowing her assault. They disrupt molecular bonds at a quantum level. Even your unnatural density cannot fully resist them. Every strike will hurt. Every mistake will bleed. Pay attention. Superman did. He'd trained with Batman, sparred with Wonder Woman, fought Darkseid and Doomsday and countless others. But this was different. Alara didn't fight like Earth's heroes or villains. She fought with the precision of someone whose race had perfected martial philosophy over millions of years. Every movement was economical. Every strike targeted structural weak points. Every defense positioned her for counterattack. She was teaching him, Superman realized, even as she was trying to hurt him, showing him that raw power meant nothing against strategic application of force. By the time the session ended, 3 hours later, by Superman's internal chronometer, he was covered in shallow cuts that his healing factor was slowly closing. Alara hadn't broken a sweat. Better, she admitted grudgingly. You learned quickly for Mon-Ki. Perhaps you will survive your next encounter with Imperial forces. Perhaps. She deactivated her power swords. Now, tomorrow we train in zero gravity. then hostile atmospheres, then psychic combat. You must be ready for every environment, every threat, because the galaxy will offer no mercy for unpreparedness. Superman nodded, too exhausted to speak. His Kryptonian physiology was still adapting to this universe's stellar radiation, drawing energy less efficiently than under Earth's yellow sun, requiring more conscious effort to access his full power. The fight had drained him more than any sparring match on Earth ever had. Mark watched from the arena's edge, his expression unreadable. Without his divine radiance, without the psychic conditioning that had sustained him for centuries, he looked diminished, almost human. "You held back," Mark observed as Superman approached. "What?" "Against Alara, you could have moved faster, hit harder. Used heat vision. You held back because you didn't want to hurt her." Mark's voice carried no judgment, only observation. "That's your weakness, Superman. Not lack of power, but unwillingness to use it fully. And in this universe, hesitation kills." "I wasn't going to seriously injure someone who was just training me," Superman said. "Weren't you?" Mark gestured back at the arena, where Alara was already sparring with another Eldar warrior. "She was trying to injure you, testing your limits, pushing you to fight like your life depended on it, because next time it will. But you treated it like a game, like sparring with friends instead of preparing for war." Superman felt his jaw tighten. "I know how to fight when it matters." "Do you?" Mark's expression softened. "On Earth, you were invulnerable, untouchable. You could afford mercy because threats couldn't hurt you. Here, everything can hurt you. Power weapons, psychic assault, warp corruption, void exposure, and still you hold back because you're afraid of becoming like the Imperium, afraid that using your full strength makes you a monster. Doesn't it?" Superman asked quietly. Mark was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know anymore. For centuries, I believed that strength without restraint led to tyranny, that power corrupts, that becoming the Imperium's weapon meant surrendering my humanity." He looked at his hands, no longer glowing, no longer divine. "But watching you fight Alara, watching you pull your punches even while bleeding, I realized that restraint can be its own form of cruelty. Because when you hold back and someone dies because you weren't strong enough, fast enough, ruthless enough, whose fault is that?" The question hung in the air like a curse. "Your education continues," came Farseer Kalara's voice from the arena's entrance. She glided toward them, her robes rippling with psychic energy. "But not just in combat. Come, it's time you learned what you're truly fighting against." She led them deeper into the craft world's crystalline depths, past chambers where Eldar artisans crafted weapons of psycho-reactive wraithbone, past meditation gardens where seers consulted the future's branching paths, past the Infinity Circuit's nexus where millions of dead Eldar souls whispered in harmonic resonance. They arrived at a chamber that made Superman's enhanced senses scream warnings, a sanctum wrapped in psychic shielding so dense it felt like pressure against his skull. Inside, contained within fields of force that crackled with barely restrained power, floated artifacts of such malevolence that looking at them directly made Superman's vision blur. "Welcome to our collection of failures," Kalara said. "Every object here represents an attempt to defeat the darkness through understanding, through study, through believing that knowledge could conquer evil." She gestured at a twisted blade that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "That is a chaos artifact, a demon weapon from the Horus heresy. 10,000 years ago, the War Master Horus, beloved son of the Emperor, fell to chaos corruption and led half the Imperium into civil war. This blade belonged to one of his champions. It promised power, understanding, transcendence. It delivered only damnation." Superman studied the weapon, and a feeling wrongness radiate from it like heat from a star. "Why keep it?" "Because forgetting our failures dooms us to repeat them," Kalara said. "The Imperium believes ignorance is safety, that forbidding knowledge prevents corruption, They are wrong. Willful blindness is just slow-motion defeat. She moved to another artifact, a crystalline structure that pulsed with sickly organic light. This is a Tyranid synapse node. We recovered it from a hive ship destroyed during the First Tyrannic War. It represents the hive mind's consciousness, billions of organisms operating as single entities, consuming entire biospheres, adapting to any defense. The Imperium fights them with fire and faith. We studied them. Neither approach has worked. Then what does work? Superman asked. Nothing, Kalara said bluntly. That's the lesson, Superman. Some threats cannot be defeated, only delayed. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with, only survived. Some horrors cannot be redeemed, only destroyed. She turned to face him fully. This is what the Imperium understands, and you refuse to accept that winning is impossible. Survival is the only victory available, and survival demands sacrifices that would make extinction seem merciful. I don't believe that, Superman said. Then you're a fool, Kalara replied without heat. But perhaps the galaxy needs fools. Perhaps wisdom has brought us nothing but slow death, and foolish hope might accomplish what clever strategy has not. She gestured, and the psychic shielding around one particular artifact, a simple book bound in what looked like human leather, intensified. That is the Liber Chaotica, and a comprehensive study of chaos compiled over millennia. It contains knowledge that could help predict demonic incursions, understand corruption vectors, maybe even develop countermeasures. Reading it drives 97% of subjects irreversibly insane. The other 3% become chaos cultists. Why show me this? Superman asked. Because your incorruptibility is untested, Kalara said. You resisted a Lord of Change's temptation, yes. But that was crude, direct psychological warfare. True corruption is subtle. It wears the face of wisdom. It speaks in truths that slowly poison understanding. It offers power to do good, then watches as good becomes evil through imperceptible degrees. Her expression was unreadable. The Imperium burns books like this, forbids knowledge, kills anyone exposed to certain truths. They call it necessary ignorance. But what if your incorruptibility could allow you to learn what others cannot? To gain knowledge without corruption's price? You want me to read that book, Superman realized. I want to know if you can read it without falling, Kalara corrected. Because if you can, if your alien biology or moral certainty provides immunity to mimetic corruption, then you represent something unprecedented. A being who can learn any knowledge, face any truth without becoming tainted. Imagine what strategic advantage that offers. And if I can't, Superman asked, if it corrupts me like everyone else, then we will kill you before corruption spreads, Kalara said matter-of-factly. Painlessly, if possible. Your sacrifice will at least provide data on mimetic corruption resistance thresholds. Superman looked at Mark, and who had remained silent throughout the exchange. What do you think? Mark's expression was conflicted. I think the Eldar are using you as a laboratory specimen, testing your limits, gambling with your sanity to see if they can weaponize your incorruptibility. He paused. I also think they might be right. That if you really are immune to corruption, the knowledge you could acquire might actually change the strategic calculus of this entire war. Might offer alternatives we've never had access to because anyone who pursued them went insane. So you're saying I should do it? I'm saying, Mark replied carefully, that I've been in this universe long enough to know there are no good choices, only different calibrations of risk and sacrifice. Reading that book is insane. Not reading it when you might be the only being capable of surviving it is also insane. Choose your insanity carefully. Superman turned back to Kalara. What's in the book? Specifically? Everything, Kalara said. The true names of demon princes, the philosophical architecture of chaos worship, rituals for summoning warp entities, detailed analysis of how faith can be inverted into corruption, the psychological vulnerabilities that make humans susceptible to each chaos god's temptation, and most dangerous, the grain of truth underlying every chaos lie. Because chaos is not purely evil, Superman. It is possibility unleashed, change without limit, honor without mercy, pleasure without restraint, despair embraced as acceptance. Each god represents an aspect of existence taken to logical extreme. Tzeentch, Superman said, remembering the Lord of Change's whispers during the demon attack. It offered me power to change the Imperium, to make things better. That was its truth, that change is necessary, that stagnation kills civilizations. Yes, Kalara confirmed. And Tzeentch's lie is that all change is good, that transformation without purpose is improvement, that the universe should be fluid chaos instead of ordered existence. The truth and the lie are so intertwined that separating them requires either divine wisdom or absolute insanity. Most beings achieve the latter while pursuing the former. How long would it take to read? Superman asked. The book is 3,000 pages, Kalara said. Densely written in multiple languages, High Gothic, Eldar, Orc glyphs, Tau philosophical notation, and languages that no longer exist. With your enhanced cognition, perhaps a week of continuous study. With the psychic pressure fighting your comprehension every moment, perhaps forever. Or perhaps you'll go mad on page 1. Superman stared at the book, feeling its wrongness like oil on his skin. Every instinct screamed that touching it was suicide, that some knowledge was too dangerous, too toxic, too fundamentally corrupting to be worth any advantage it offered. But he also thought about the Imperium's ignorance, about how they fought enemies they didn't understand, using strategies that hadn't worked for 10,000 years, burning books and killing scholars because knowledge itself was treated as heresy, about how that willful blindness had created a civilization drowning in its own fear. "I'll do it," Superman said, "but with conditions." "Name them," Kalara said. "No, first, Mark stays with me during the reading. If I start showing corruption signs, he has authority to stop me by force. Second, you provide detailed baseline measurements of my mental state before and during exposure, so we can quantify any changes. Third, if this works, if I can read the book without corruption, you share what I learn with others who might use it to actually save lives, rather than just maintaining strategic advantages." Kalara considered this. "Acceptable. Though I warn you, sharing such knowledge is dangerous regardless of your incorruptibility. The Imperium will view any dissemination of chaos lore as heresy. They will hunt those who possess it, kill those who read it, burn worlds that harbor it." "Then they're idiots," Superman said bluntly. "Fighting an enemy you refuse to understand is just slow-motion suicide. The Imperium's ignorance is killing them as surely as any demon." "Perhaps," Kalara agreed. "Or perhaps their ignorance is the only thing protecting them from damnation. Time will tell which." She gestured, and the psychic shielding around the Liber Chaotica began to lower. "Prepare yourself, Superman. What you're about to read will challenge every certainty you hold. Will show you truths about the universe that make the Imperium's cruelty seem not just understandable, but necessary. Will force you to confront the possibility that hope itself might be humanity's greatest weakness." Superman approached the book, his hand hovering over its cursed binding. He could feel it reaching for him, not with physical force, but with psychological hunger. It wanted to be read, wanted to be understood, and wanted to sink its knowledge into his mind and see if incorruptibility was real or just another delusion waiting to shatter. "Last chance to reconsider," Mark said quietly. "Once you start reading, there's no unseeing what you'll learn, no unknowing what you'll understand. Knowledge like this doesn't just change your mind, it changes what you are." Superman thought of Earth, of Lois telling him that knowledge was always better than ignorance, even when the truth hurt. Of Jonathan Kent teaching him that understanding your enemies didn't mean becoming like them. of every philosophy professor and scientist and teacher who'd insisted that enlightenment was worth any personal cost. Then he thought of the Imperium burning scholars, of the Inquisition killing anyone who asked questions, and of 10,000 years of darkness enforced through mandatory ignorance. "If understanding damns me," Superman said, "then I'll be damned, because fighting blind is what's killing this galaxy, and I won't contribute to that death by choosing comfortable ignorance over dangerous truth." He opened the book, and the galaxy's accumulated horrors rushed into his mind like a tidal wave of existential poison. The first page was written in blood that had never dried. Superman's enhanced vision processed the text instantly. High Gothic script detailing the philosophical origins of chaos, the metaphysical architecture of the warp, the precise moment when thought became corruption and desire became damnation. The words burned themselves into his consciousness with the weight of absolute truth mixed with absolute lies, each sentence designed to slowly erode certainty until madness seemed like clarity. In the beginning, there was the immaterium, unformed, pure potential. Consciousness gave it shape, emotion gave it purpose, and excess gave it hunger. Superman felt the words trying to reshape his understanding of reality. The warp wasn't evil, the book insisted. It was reflection, humanity's collective unconscious made manifest, and responding to every thought and feeling and desire across a galaxy of trillions. The chaos gods weren't invaders, they were consequences. Products of sentient civilizations accumulated psychological waste. His hands trembled. The book was heavy, not physically, but conceptually. Each page weighed on his mind like lead, pressing against his Kryptonian mental architecture with the force of weaponized philosophy. "Page 1, Mark said from his position beside Superman, his voice carefully neutral. Heart rate elevated but steady, pupil dilation within acceptable ranges, no signs of psychic taint yet. Continue." Superman turned the page. "Know that Khorne is not merely bloodlust, but honor perfected into nihilism. Every warrior who dies for a cause feeds him. Every noble sacrifice strengthens his throne. For the Imperium's billion martyrs are his greatest worshippers, though they pray to another name. Violence justified by righteousness is still violence. Blood spilled for the Emperor still screams Khorne's glory." The words hit like physical blows. Superman saw the truth in them, saw how the Imperium's endless warfare, its glorification of sacrifice, its worship of martial honor, fed the very entity it claimed to oppose. Saw how every Space Marine's righteous fury, every Imperial Guard soldier's last stand, every battle sister's faithful execution added weight to Khorne's domain. "That's..." Superman's voice cracked. "That's insane. The Imperium fights chaos. They dedicate everything to opposing it." "And in doing so," Kalara said from beyond the psychic shielding, "they feed it. Now this is chaos's ultimate joke, that resistance strengthens what you resist. That fighting evil with violence creates more violence. That every atrocity committed to stop chaos just expands chaos's dominion." Her voice was clinical, detached. "The Imperium has been feeding its enemies for 10,000 years while believing itself pure. That's the truth that breaks most readers." Superman forced himself to continue. Page after page of philosophical poison, each one carefully constructed to demolish certainty. He learned that Nurgle was not disease, but acceptance, embracing entropy, finding peace in decay, understanding that death was mercy compared to the Imperium's endless suffering. Every citizen who gave up hope, every world that surrendered to plague rather than fight, fed the plague god's gardens. And he learned that Slaanesh was not perversion, but perfection, the pursuit of excellence taken beyond biological limits, art and sensation and experience elevated until they consumed the soul. Every Eldar who had chased pleasure during their empire's height, every human who sought transcendence through sensory experience, Every artist who sacrificed morality for their craft contributed to She Who Thirsts' eternal feast. And Tzeentch. The book devoted 600 pages to Tzeentch, the architect of fate, the changer of ways, the god of hope and ambition, and the desperate belief that knowledge could save you. Tzeentch is the god of improvement, the book explained in script that seemed to writhe. Every scientist seeking understanding, every reformer demanding change, every idealist believing they can make things better. Every hero who refuses to accept the universe's cruelty and insists on fighting anyway. All of them are Tzeentch's children, whether they acknowledge it or not. Because hope, real hope, not the Imperium's hollow prayer, is change incarnate, and change is chaos. Superman's hands were shaking now. His enhanced mind was processing the words faster than human comprehension, but that meant the poison spread faster too. He could feel it trying to take root, not corrupting his morals, but weaponizing his principles against him. You believe in hope, the book whispered through text that seemed to speak directly to his thoughts. You believe things can be better. You refuse to accept that cruelty is necessary. These beliefs are noble, pure, and they will doom everyone you try to save, because you're fighting change with stagnation when change is already winning. Heart rate spiking, Mark reported, his voice tight with concern. Showing signs of psychological stress. Superman, talk to me. What are you experiencing? Truth, Superman managed to say. I'm experiencing truth mixed with lies so perfectly I can't tell them apart. The book is right. The Imperium's methods feed the very forces they fight. Every execution, every purge, every act of necessary cruelty strengthens chaos. But the alternative? He looked up at Mark with eyes that had seen too much. The book says the alternative is acceptance, that fighting chaos is futile, that the only way to survive is to surrender to entropy and accept damnation, that hope itself is the enemy. And do you believe that? Mark asked. Superman wanted to say no, wanted to reject the book's philosophy entirely, to close it and walk away and pretend the last hour hadn't happened. But his Kryptonian mind wouldn't let him lie to himself. The book's arguments were too well constructed, too thoroughly supported by millennia of evidence. I believe, Superman said slowly, that the book is showing me how the Imperium's ignorance is strategic, that they burn knowledge like this because understanding chaos makes it harder to fight. That sometimes blindness really is strength. He forced himself to continue reading. I also believe that surrender dressed as wisdom, that accepting ignorance as virtue is just another form of damnation. Page after page, hour after hour, Superman read accounts of chaos corruption from every angle. Clinical analysis, first-hand testimonials from fallen worlds, say philosophical treatises on the nature of evil, tactical assessments of demon incursions. The book showed him exactly how cults formed, how whispers became obsession, how good intentions paved roads to damnation with microscopic steps that seemed reasonable until suddenly you were kneeling before dark gods and calling it enlightenment. He saw the Horus heresy from Chaos's perspective, how Horus, greatest of the Emperor's sons, had been manipulated through truth. How showing him the Emperor's plans for godhood, the suffering built into the Imperium's foundation, the lies underlying the imperial truth had turned him from loyal son to arch-traitor. The book made it clear. Horus hadn't been corrupted through deception. He'd been corrupted through revelation, through seeing what the Emperor really was and rejecting that vision. The Emperor, the book explained in script that tasted like ashes, is the greatest servant of chaos who ever lived. His xenocidal crusades fed Khorne. His brutal efficiency fed Nurgle's despair. His quest for perfection fed Slaanesh. And his belief that he could reshape humanity into something better fed Tzeentch's eternal hunger for a change. 10,000 years on the Golden Throne, bleeding psychic power into the warp, strengthening the very entities he sought to destroy. The galaxy's greatest joke, Its supposed savior is its most prolific damner. Superman closed the book. Mark lunged forward. "What's wrong? Are you corrupted? Do I need to—" "No," Superman said, his voice steady despite the existential vertigo threatening to drag him under. "I'm not corrupted, but I understand now. I understand what the Imperium is protecting against. Why they burn books, why they kill scholars, why ignorance is sacred." He looked at Kalara through the psychic shielding. Because knowledge like this doesn't just inform, it weaponizes understanding, makes you see patterns that can't be unseen, forces you to confront truths that turn certainty into quicksand. "Then you comprehend the Imperium's dilemma," Kalara said. "Fight chaos through ignorance and slowly lose ground to enemies you don't understand. Or fight through knowledge and risk that very knowledge corrupting your defenders." "That's not the dilemma," Superman said, standing on shaking legs. "The real dilemma is that both approaches are failing. The Imperium's ignorance hasn't saved them. They're bleeding worlds every year, sustaining losses that would collapse any sane civilization. And those who seek knowledge fall to corruption because they approach it alone, in darkness, without proper context or protection." He steadied himself against the chamber's wall, his Kryptonian physiology fighting to process the psychic poison he'd just absorbed. "What's needed is a third option, a way to understand chaos without being consumed by it, to learn the enemy's nature without becoming the enemy." "And you believe you can be that third option?" Kalara asked. Superman met her gaze. "I don't know, but I read 1,000 pages of the most concentrated philosophical corruption in the galaxy, and I'm still standing, still me, still believe in hope even though I now understand exactly how hope feeds Tzeentch. Still believe in fighting even though I know violence strengthens Khorne. Still believe things can be better even though I comprehend how that belief is weaponized against idealists." He pushed away from the wall. "So either I'm the most stubborn fool in existence, or incorruptibility is real. Either way, we're going to find out." "You've only read a third of the book," Kalara observed. "The section on tactical applications is twice as long. The rituals and true names are in the final chapters. Will you continue?" Superman looked at the Liber Chaotica, feeling its psychic weight pressing against his consciousness. Every instinct screamed to stop, to close the book and never touch it again, to accept that some knowledge was too dangerous regardless of potential benefits. But he thought about the Imperium's 10,000 years of ignorance, about Varentia burning scholars and forbidding questions, and about civilizations collapsing because they couldn't understand the threats they faced, about Mark, broken by a system that demanded faith over comprehension. "Yes," Superman said. "I'll finish it, because if I'm right, if incorruptibility is real, then I can learn things that might actually save lives, might offer alternatives to the Imperium's slow-motion suicide. And if I'm wrong," he shrugged, "then you'll kill me before corruption spreads. Either way, we get an answer." "Madness," Mark muttered. "Absolute madness." "Perhaps," Kalara agreed. "But perhaps madness is what this galaxy needs. Sanity has brought us only death and despair. Let us see what cosmic insanity might accomplish." She adjusted the psychic shielding. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow you'll read the tactical sections, the parts that explain how to predict demon incursions, and identify cult formations, recognize corruption vectors, the knowledge that could actually change how we fight this war." Superman nodded, exhaustion pulling at his enhanced physiology. Reading the book had drained him more than physical combat ever had. Not his body, but his mind, his soul, the fundamental certainty that had carried him through every challenge on Earth. As they left the chamber, Superman felt the book's presence lingering in his thoughts like psychic residue. The words echoed, trying to reshape his understanding of reality, trying to convince him that the Imperium was right, that hope was dangerous, that survival demanded damnation. He rejected those whispers. Not through ignorance. He couldn't unlearn what he'd read, but through choice. through conscious decision that understanding chaos didn't mean accepting chaos, and that seeing the universe's cruelty didn't require becoming cruel yourself. "You're different," Mark observed as they walked through the craft world's crystalline corridors. "Not corrupted, but changed. I can see it in your eyes, the weight of knowledge that can't be unlearned." "I read that the Emperor is Chaos's greatest servant," Superman said quietly. "That every prayer to the Golden Throne strengthens the warp. That the Imperium's survival strategy is slowly killing them. That hope itself is weaponized by Tzeentch." He stopped walking, turned to face Mark directly. "And knowing all that, I still believe there's a better way. Still believe the Imperium's cruelty isn't necessary. Still believe hope isn't heresy." He managed a tired smile. "So either I'm incorruptible, I'm the most corrupted being in existence and don't realize it yet. Or," Mark said slowly, "you're something this universe has never encountered. Something too fundamentally different to fit into its rules. Something that breaks the calculus of corruption versus purity because you operate by entirely different metaphysics." His expression was unreadable. "That possibility terrifies me more than any demon." "Why?" "Because," Mark said, "if you're right, if you really can learn anything without corruption, understand everything without damnation, fight without feeding the forces you oppose, then everything I've done for the last 10,000 years was wrong. Every compromise I made, every atrocity I committed, every time I chose cruel pragmatism over dangerous idealism, it was all unnecessary. I could have been a hero, as should have been a hero. But I chose to be a weapon instead." Superman saw the pain in Mark's eyes. Not physical, but existential. The agony of someone realizing that their entire life might have been built on a lie. That the prices they'd paid, the sacrifices they'd made, the damnation they'd embraced might have been avoidable. "It's not too late," Superman said, "to choose differently, to try being a hero again." "Isn't it?" Mark laughed bitterly. "Superman, I've executed children, burned worlds, killed innocents by the millions in the Emperor's name. What redemption exists for that? What heroism could possibly outweigh 10,000 years of necessary evil?" "I don't know," Superman admitted, "but I know that giving up is guaranteed failure, that refusing to try is the only unforgivable sin, that as long as you're alive, and as long as you can choose, there's possibility." He placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "Help me prove there's another way. Help me show this universe that hope isn't heresy, that strength doesn't require cruelty, that survival doesn't demand damnation. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the hero you used to be, or discover someone even better." Mark stood silent for a long moment, his expression cycling through doubt and longing and fear and desperate, fragile hope. Then he nodded, once, sharply. "All right," Mark said. "I'll help you. Not because I believe you'll succeed, I've seen too much to believe in miracles, but because..." He paused, searching for words. "Because watching you try might be worth the inevitable heartbreak when reality crushes your idealism." "That's the most pessimistic agreement I've ever received," Superman said. "So welcome to the 41st Millennium," Mark replied, "where pessimism is just realism wearing different clothes." Above them, beyond the craft world's wraithbone walls, the Imperium's fleet drew closer. Hundreds of ships bearing the Aquila, carrying thousands of Astra Militarum soldiers, dozens of Space Marine strike teams, and Inquisitor Varencia's absolute certainty that the heretic called Superman would burn. The siege of Saim-Han was about to begin, and Superman's education in the 41st Millennium, in survival, strategy, and the terrible price of remaining hopeful in a hopeless universe, was accelerating toward its first real test. Tomorrow, he would finish reading the Liber Chaotica, would learn the tactical applications of chaos knowledge, would gain understanding that could change how entire wars were fought. Tonight, he would dream of Earth, of yellow suns and heroism that didn't require damnation, of a universe where hope was virtue instead of heresy. And when he woke, he would face the question that defined everything. Could incorruptible knowledge save a galaxy? Or would understanding chaos just create a new kind of monster? One who called damnation enlightenment and wore corruption like wisdom. The answer would come soon. The Imperium was bringing it, written in fire and faith and 10,000 years of righteous fury. The final page of the Liber Chaotica contained only one sentence, written in script that seemed to shift between languages. Now that you understand chaos, what will you do with that understanding? Superman closed the book and emerged from the chamber, 1 week of intensive study complete. His Kryptonian mind had processed every page, absorbed every tactical analysis, memorized every corruption vector and countermeasure. He now possessed knowledge that would make him excommunicate traitores 1,000 times over in the Imperium's eyes. The true names of demon princes, the philosophical architecture of warp entities, the precise moments when hope became heresy, and he was still himself, still Superman, still believed in something better. Farseer Kalara's testing confirmed what they'd all suspected. Complete immunity to mimetic corruption. Not because Superman was wiser or stronger-willed than those who'd fallen before, but because his fundamental metaphysics was simply incompatible with this universe's rules. Kryptonian biology didn't interface with the warp the same way human consciousness did. His certainty wasn't faith that could be inverted into corruption. It was alien conviction that chaos couldn't properly pass. "Your proof," Eldrad Ulthran said when the results came through, "that sometimes survival requires something from outside the system, that 10,000 years of strategic wisdom might be wrong simply because it was built on assumptions that don't apply to you." The ancient Farseer managed something that might have been a smile. "The Imperium will hunt you for this knowledge. Chaos will try to twist it, and every faction will seek to weaponize what you've learned. But perhaps, just perhaps, you'll use it to find paths we never imagined, to answer questions we stopped asking millennia ago." Above the craft world, Varensha's fleet arrived, 1,000 ships bearing the Imperium's fury, demanding Superman's execution and Saimhan's complicity. The war for Superman's fate, and perhaps the fate of the 41st Millennium itself, was beginning. Mark stood beside Superman at the craft world's observation deck, watching the Imperial fleet deploy an attack formation. Without his divine radiance, without the Imperium's certainty sustaining him, he looked almost peaceful, almost free. "I don't know how this ends," Mark admitted. "Don't know if your hope will save anyone or just create new catastrophes. Don't know if incorruptibility is miracle or curse." He looked at Superman directly. "But I know I want to see what happens when someone refuses to accept this universe's rules. When someone insists on finding better answers to impossible questions. When hope tries to survive in hell." "Then stay with me," Superman said. "Help me prove there's another way. Even if we fail, especially if we fail, let's fail trying to be heroes instead of just surviving as weapons." Mark's response was interrupted by klaxons. Varensha was hailing the craft world, demanding Superman's surrender. The true test was beginning. Everything before this had been preparation, education, understanding the enemy. Now came action. Choice. The moment when Superman would discover whether his principles could survive contact with the 41st Millennium's merciless reality. And as he prepared to face the Imperial fleet, to confront Varensha one final time, to fight for the possibility that hope might not be heresy after all, Superman thought of Jonathan Kent's words from a lifetime ago, in a universe where heroism was simpler. "It's not about being strong enough to win, Clark. It's about being brave enough to stand for what's right, even when right seems impossible." In the 41st Millennium, where there was only war, Superman was about to discover if those words still held meaning, if courage could overcome cruelty, if one incorruptible soul could challenge 10,000 years of necessary evil. The The answer would be written in the battles to come. Against the Imperium's righteousness, Chaos's seduction, and the galaxy's crushing indifference to individual heroism. But for now, as Varencia's ultimatum echoed through the void and Mark stood beside him as ally rather than enemy, Superman allowed himself something the 41st Millennium had nearly forgotten. Hope, not blind faith. Not naive optimism, but conscious, informed, deliberate hope. The choice to believe in possibility despite overwhelming evidence of impossibility. The refusal to let darkness define reality. The stubborn insistence that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to be good in a universe built on evil. Whether that hope would save him or doom him remained to be seen. But in a galaxy where hope was heresy, simply trying might be the most revolutionary act possible. The Emperor protects. More stories await. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.